call this meeting to order. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council Township of North Huron accept the agenda for October 25th, 2019 special meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have Paul, seconder is Anita. All in favor? Carries. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we will move on. Reports. September 2019 year-to-date report. Donna, I'm going to hand it over to you and have a go at it.
Thank you very much, Council. So this morning is all about opportunities. So here we are at 3/4 of the way through our budget year, and you folks have been on council now for a year, and so we are looking for any feedback from you at the end of today, whether you found today's meeting helpful or if there's any changes, and if you would like to continue this as an annual exercise each year, or if there's something in the format that we can do to make it more interactive with you. So the report that you had in your council agenda is the high-level report that you get every quarter. And so today the individual department heads are going to elaborate on that and just give us a sense of where we're at. So September is like 75% of the way through the year, or 3/4. But as you know, we have a lot of seasonal activities. We've talked about this many times. We're not a 1/12 business where our activities and expenses are the same every month. They fluctuate so much by season and weather and many other things. So as I said, and I'm not a person to get hung up on percentages, and Bernie and I have just had this conversation about something else. To me, percentages can distort things unnecessarily. And so you're going to hear everybody talk about that as we move through. But you do have to have a guideline. So as I said, we're looking for about 75% is in this report that you had. That was our guideline, and then we look at, how close are we to that, and why aren't we there. So we're going to be talking about, the department heads are going to be telling you what's taking place, what's left to do, what's happening until the end of the year, so that you have a bit of an idea here. But the biggest opportunity of today's meeting is to set the basis for the 2020 budget. So the timing is excellent. It gave all of the department heads the real opportunity to go through their budgets line by line with a fine-tooth comb and go and say to themselves, okay, so for 2020 budget, now I know I've got to make an adjustment here, I've got to set up new accounts there, it certainly gives us the chance to set the stage for the 2020 budget and give us a good leap start into that. So that was from a staff point, that was our big goal for today as well. So twofold, where are we at and what are we going to do next? So when we get to this time of year, we find out that there are a number of projects. Here we are already into end of October. And so unfortunately we do find out there's projects that are just not going to get done. So there's a combination of two things. Either they're not going to get done at all, or they're partway done and will have to be finished in 2020. So the staff are going to talk to you about any of those situations, so it's not a surprise by the end of the year. And there are a couple of spots where we're over on something or extremely under. So then it gives us the opportunity to talk about that and take mitigation measures before the end of the year. So just to recap, our budget was passed on March the 18th of 2019, which is good. We try to get our budget passed earlier and earlier each year. We know that normally by that time we don't have the information from the county and school boards, and if you remember last year, so you don't have a total picture of what a person's individual tax bill is actually going to be. We only know the municipal portion. So this year, if you remember, we passed our budget, then had to wait on the county and school boards, which come later, and then I gave you an update as to what an actual person's property looks like. And that'll be the situation again this year. We'll get our budget passed before they do. Normally that's what happens. So again, our total expenditures this year, just over 18 million. Our operating budget, which I think was probably a surprise to some of you when you came onto council, our operating budget alone is $13 million. And so with that, we don't have a lot of wiggle room in what we can change. We're constantly striving to make updates and change things, but the operating budget is what it is, and the only way you reduce that operating budget is to change the level of service as to what you're providing. So that's discussions that we'll be having over the next few years for sure. In the capital budget, we're spending $4.2 million, and of course, as you remember, the biggest part of that is the new fire hall public works building, which again, Sean or Mark will be giving you an update on that as we move through this morning's meeting. And we collect total revenue of just over 11 million, almost $12 million. And every year we take to and from the tax stabilization account. We started this years ago that we take, and that $338,000, really what that was our accumulated surplus from prior years. And so we always use that amount as our starting point to help balance the budget, and you'll have seen that for years in there. So the difference between our expenditures and the revenue that we have is raised from taxation. So we raised $5.9 million from taxation, and that's how much we have to collect as part of our budget process. So just a couple of overviews. So of course, we're a service provider. So our biggest expense is obviously wages and benefits, because that's what we do. We provide service. And so each department, there's, in lots of cases where there is no offsetting revenue because we're providing services. So our wages and benefits, our total budget was $5.4 million. We're sitting at 4.1, which is 77%. So we're right on where we're supposed to be at this time of the year. And of course, we budget for, we know that when we're budgeting. So the only variations you have there is if a staff position was vacant throughout the year or things like that. There has to be some sort of anomaly for the wages to be off. And of course, hydro is one we monitor all the time. Now, in our reports, we're pretty good now, but that was to August. We didn't have the September bills as part of this, so we knew that we were 1 month off there. But the hydro, and we'll be talking about this later on, is that there's a couple of spots where we know we can adjust the hydro down a little bit next year, so we'll be talking about that as we move forward. So overall, right now, we're sitting at operating revenue of 91%, which is high, and I'm going to explain that to you in a few minutes. And the expenses for operating at our overall at about 77%, which again makes sense. Our capital revenue, because we've received all our money, obviously the biggest change there, or the biggest notation there, is for the fire hall. We have all the money from the sale, but we haven't paid out all the expenses. So again, that's why the capital revenue looks so high. And as we were saying, the department heads will give you updates. At this point in the year, a lot of our capital isn't done, or so will be done or will be moved forward. So the capitals are quite low, and we'll talk about that. And then again, when you mesh those two together, revenue at 86% and expenses at 67%. So we'll dive into that a little bit more as we go along. So in general government, is, that includes things like, it's kind of our catch-all, but our, all the topics that we have line up to our FIR, which is our financial information return, which is what we file with the ministry. So when you wonder like why do you have those categories and such, it's all mandated by the province in that form that we file. And so we line up all our revenue and expenses and use the terminology that's used in the FIR. So that's just why we do that. So general government includes our things like licenses and permits, interest income, miscellaneous revenue, our big OMPF grant funding, and I'll just give you a side note there. We got our 2020 allocation. One of our problems last year was that they gave it to us way late, and we were already deep into the budget, and so all municipalities complained about that, and they said they'd have it out to us early. Unfortunately though, the structure of the grant is the same, and we didn't have any transition funding, but our funding's gonna be down 71%, so we know that's going into.
71,000.
Sorry, what did I say?
71%.
Oh, sorry, 71,000, yes, thank you. That would not be good.
71%, I'm leaving.
Yeah. I better go with you. Yes. So, yes, thank you, $71,000 less, so we know that last year, it was about 30-some thousand less, but as I said, we didn't know that till late on. This year, at least, we know that up front, and so we know that when we're starting our budget for sure. So, we're over in the revenue, and the reasons for that is because of some of the money we have received that we have to make decisions for before the end of the year and to move anything into reserve. So the biggest reason our revenue is over is because of the $532,000 modernization fund. So we obviously hadn't budgeted for that. It was money that came out after the budget. And we really haven't passed a motion as to what we're going to do with that money, but we need to do that before the end of the year. Now, there have been a couple of items come forward to council. There was a small amount of money going to the strategic plan. We were going to take about $6,000 of that for the strategic plan, and then we were going to take what was the other one? The live streaming for eScribe we were going to take out of there. I think that was about $15,000. So those two small amounts aside, we really haven't passed a motion as to what we're going to do with that, and so we need to do that before year end so that it doesn't show as a huge surplus on our year end files. We also received $10,000 for the cannabis legalization. So, and again, that was money we hadn't expected for, and you won't receive any more money because you have passed a motion to opt out. Other municipalities will continue to receive money on that. So I think through Dwayne and Trevor, we've had a couple of discussions with the OPP to see if there was any results as this legislation came in. Has there been any effects causing extra policing and that sort of thing? So there really hasn't been anything identified at this minute. You simply could use it to offset your police costs, or we can set it aside, and I'm not sure whether, you know, some public education, or there could be a number of things that we could choose to do with that money. But if we don't end up using it before the end of the year, we do want to set it aside in reserve so that, because as I said, it was money we weren't budgeting for.
So
Yeah.
Donna, just to follow up with council, that the police services board has asked themselves to come back next meeting with some suggestion with the OPP as to how we may use some or all of it in order to decide whether, if there's some certain programs the police services board thinks that would be a good idea from a municipality's standpoint, and then we will bring that information back to council as we work through the process with the OPP.
Sure, thank you for the update. So another $10,000 that I don't have listed on here because we have budgeted for it is through our Schedule F with Morris Turnberry. They give us $10,000, so for whatever council chooses to use it for. So the rest of the money in that schedule is specifically allocated to the complex, the Blythe Arena, and the cemetery department. But there is a $10,000 that they do give us that is not specifically allocated. So as I said, we knew that money was coming, but we can as I said, at our discretion, apply it to the airport, to daycare, to wherever we want throughout the municipality. So that's a discussion that I need you to think about. As I said, we knew the money was coming. We just need to know which department, do we put it against, or, do we put it away, or what do we want to do with that $10,000?
So Donna, if you don't mind me asking, you said we knew it was coming, so we do have it now?
They pay it, they don't pay it till November, but we budget for it because, as I said, because the agreement is a signed agreement, we know that money's coming, and the same like in the, like Sean budgets for the cemetery portion under cemetery, and Vicky budgets for the recreation part. So yeah, we knew that money's coming. It's just, as I said, we don't know which department, if you will, where it's gonna get allocated to. So just think about that.
Just one more quick question.
Yeah.
What did we put it towards last year?
This was just, I believe the first time that we've had it because of the.
Before it was the airport.
Okay.
It was the airport, I think, and then they've taken that money,
No,
this was added. This was added because they wanted they wanted something that they could justify, and that's part of the discussion about Schedule F.
Okay.
But right now, they've left it alone. It says, we'll give you 10,000, because we can justify it to our constituents that we do a lot of things in North Huron, and we don't have anything specific, but we have, here you go. But we need to be better at justifying what those are for Schedule F.
Okay.
Okay, so then also, and Sean can maybe touch on this one a little bit more, is we receive money from Aggregate Resources, which is in regard to the East Wallanosh gravel pits. I think that's how that works. And so what we've always done, we never know what this amount of money is going to be. And so what we do is we add that, we have a East Wallanosh gravel pit reserve, and any bit of money that we get through this, we always add that into the reserve, so that at such time when we have to deal with closing the gravel pits, then we have that money. And I should have brought what that total reserve is, but I can get that for you at some point before today's meeting's out, or give it to you next round. So anyway, as I said, we do have some decisions to be made on these funds, these extra funds that we've received, because we don't want them to show up as a large surplus. So I'm not asking for that today, but it is something that we have to do before year end. And then also, as you know, we got extra gas tax funding money. Again, we hadn't budgeted for that, but we got an extra $155,000 in gas tax money as a one-time payment this year. And so our plan, Sean and I have been talking, it's probably going to be allocated to either Carling Terrace for next year, depending on how the tenders come in. We've got that big Carling Terrace project, which I think now is like $1 million something, Sean, over $1.5 million. So we're going to have to, it's going to take all the money we can scrape up to be able to pay for that. So anyway, we'll be talking about that further in the rounds of the budget. So anyway, we do have some decisions to make before the end of the year. So on the expense side of general government, there's not a whole lot there. So it includes things like the physician recruitment payments, and so we make 2 payments per year. We haven't made the second payment, but we'll be releasing that anytime. As staff, we're very appreciative that the last two years, 2019 and 18 budget, Council has set aside a dedicated asset management reserve. It's not a whole lot of money, $127,000, but it's better than nothing. So we're setting money aside for future asset replacement, and as you know, with the millions of dollars of assets, it is a drop in the bucket, but you've got to get started. So at least we're doing something there. In addition to, we do transfer a lot of money to reserve for other, for long term, like this isn't the only spot. So in fire, like Marty, I'll talk to you, like we set aside $100,000 a year for fire capital replacement. You have that $15 a month for water and sewer. The department heads, again, one of the other things was, like in landfill this year, we had set aside, we thought we were doing really well, we said, we put a $63,000 into reserve for the landfill for future, and anyway, that went by the wayside, but luckily, as I said, previously, we had, put 50,000 away, then we put 63 this year, trying to get started on putting money away, and of course, it went like that, but however, we at least had a little bit of money set aside, and as staff, we try to scrape out everything we can to set aside into reserves, just because the future holds such big dollars for replacement.
Don, I just want to touch
Yeah.
on the asset management for a second. We had the gentleman come and talk to us about it before. From everything that I've seen in the meetings I've gone to, whether it's Ottawa, Bracebridge, or conversations with other mayors, this is going to be very important, because as we move forward, I'm going to say within the next 5 years, if a town does not have its asset management set up, they're not gonna get the loans and they're not gonna get the grants. This is one that I can see from a business point of view, and everybody I'm talking to, that although you can't really justify to the customer that, you can't justify why you're having that money there, but it's all gonna do with, when you go for a grant, sooner or later on that grant form, it's gonna say, show us your asset management. And for the communities out there that say we just haven't been able to do it, they're gonna get a luck. They're just not gonna get grants, so we just wanna keep that in mind as we do our budget. Go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
And that's a good point. So we have our asset management plan done and have had for years. But the thing of it is that, so when we were mandated to start working on asset management plans, at that time, we had never had to gather that data before. So it was in 2009, it was a huge data gathering exercise. And so we've done all sorts of things. Our goal so we had an asset management plan done in 2013, and we had it updated in 2016. So since 2016, of course, we've had so many staff changes, but our big goal that Sean and I and the other department heads are working on is to make sure that the data in the asset management plan is good, because you don't want garbage in, garbage out. So we are not going to update our plan per se for a couple of years, because we've been doing all sorts of things to improve the data. So part of that is that you have to have condition assessment. So that's why we spent the $100,000 cammering the sewers in Wingham. So now, right now, we're working with BM Ross to be able to, so what they did is they cambered all the sewers. Now they're coming up with ratings as to what condition each piece of sewer is in, and then we're gonna be able to, then that tells Sean in the future, the ones that were, if there was ones that were blocked and things like that, those are the ones that he's gotta work on and such. So we're making strides on our, the data in our asset management plan all the time. And it does take money to do that, so, and to meet the new regulations, as we've been talking about, we probably are going to have external assistance on that. But coming out the pipe, I sit on an asset management committee with AMO, and we had a meeting this week, and there's money coming out the pipe because they know little municipalities like us, just simply, the phrase was that your asset management is on the corner of the corner of the corner of your desk. So, and that is so true, because we don't have dedicated asset management people, where the larger centers have a department in asset management. So anyway, we'll carry on. So our loan payments, various loan payments that we have throughout for our long-term debt, the second payment of that gets paid later on in the year. And we still have some discussions on environment and energy, and there's nothing out of the ordinary there, but we're talking about revamping that. We have $3,500 there, and so we've been talking about the tree programs and different programs. What are we gonna do to revamp some of that? So moving on into the council budget. So in the council budget, the total budget is $113,000. We're at $83,000, so 74%. This includes your honorarium, benefits, travel, training, and council contingency. With new council members, we anticipated that that the training requirements or costs would be quite significant. And I have to give you credit, you folks have all attended pretty significant amounts of training this year and will continue to do so over the next few years. So it looks like we'll have some funds left in that training budget that we'll be able to move forward to continue to give you opportunities as you move through to take advantage of whatever training. And I think you have media training and you've had cyber training. We've had all sorts of training meetings, which is great that you take the time to go to that. And then we'll have some adjustments to individual lines, like for example, I know that I hadn't budgeted enough for benefit costs, meaning like your CPP and that sort of thing. So I do have to make some adjustments to that, but overall it's not going to change your budget for next year. So unless as we work through the budget, council has some ideas that they want to change. So on the administration side, so administration covers all the admin wages for all the folks here in this office and benefits. We put legal and accounting in there, and as you know, we've had a fair bit of legal discussions throughout this year. We budget there for tax write-offs, our banks and fees, charges, election expense. So we put money towards the election each year. Inspection and contracts, service awards, marriage licenses, HR costs, and some asset management costs all fall under there too. So the one point where we're overspent here, and I'm sure this is no surprise to you, is under inspections and contracts for the closed meeting investigator. We budgeted $9,000 because we were kind of thinking to ourselves, 3 at $3,000. Well, we've spent $27,000 so far. And you know why, and you know all the reports that you have.
11,000 a time tends to do that.
Yes, it does. So, in the administration department then, we're watching other accounts, even though it's not like, it's not a repercussion to supplies, that this one's over, but we're trying to sort of monitor our whole administration budget to kind of make some of this up for year end. And then as we work on the next budget, we're gonna have to decide how much do we budget for on a go-forward basis for a meeting investigation. So that's just one point that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of, that I knew you knew you were over there, but just by how much. So Marty's gonna come up next, and but just before he does, I did a quick little, I wasn't really sure who was gonna report on policing, but and Trevor can add to this after, as I said, just very briefly. Under the grant revenue, we show at 90%, and we do have some grant money coming. We did take a chance, and in the past, the Wigan Police had always received about $100,000 through various grants. They changed the whole grant structure, and as we were working through the budget with the board, we did contact the police grant people, I'll say that, and they told us that the new, just because we didn't have our own police force anymore, we would still qualify for grants. So through Trevor, and I give a lot of credit to Wendy Burrows, she wrote a very good grant application under the new Community Safety and Policing Program, and we were approved for a 3-year grant, and so we get $71,250 each year for the next 3 years. Now, their year end doesn't align with ours, so you know the money kind of comes and goes, but we're assured of getting this money. And they have a lot of a wonderful program for community work set up. I don't know, Trevor, have council been updated on that at this point, Carson, what the grant and all of that?
So the council is aware of the
Okay.
grant. They have been aware of the
Okay.
grant. We just last Police Services Board meeting signed the application with the approval for that. We also communicated, because of the new detachment commander, so Wendy Burrows has been succumbed to back to her original placement in London, and now the detachment commander is Inspector Rob Scott, who is the detachment commander for Perth County as well. So we had a very lengthy discussion about making sure that the community safety and policing grant, the check-ins and the balances that you have to do at the end of this in order to make sure that you've spent what you've got and how you've spent it, are going to be done by the OPP and not by municipal staff. Because obviously we don't have the resource, it wasn't done by municipal staff before, so it was done by the police service. So the concern was, we wanted to make sure, because it's a lengthy report that has to be in every year done. So we have been assured by the OPP that we are not the only municipality that has this grant, so they'll be pulling the proper data. And Inspector Rob Scott was gonna contact Wendy Burrows and make sure he understood exactly what her thoughts were and the board's thoughts were, so that we make sure that they're pulling the right data from their reports to make sure that they're getting, when these applications, or these reconciliations and information needs to be sent back, that they're sent back, so we don't have any issue with the grant, having to return any of the grant money.
Right, thank you for that update.
Trevor, do we have any say at all, or do they come back to us and say, this is what we'd like to do with the grant? What do you folks think, or?
Yeah, so the grant application provided a direction of where we see, mental health was obviously the biggest ticketed item, where they were looking to provide some mental health support and initiatives within the county and within the town of Wingham, as it relates to this. So you know, they're figuring out what that, at the end of the day, the issue is that they have is, you've got somebody who wrote the application and had thoughts about how they were gonna issue it out, leave, and now one person come in, and he's now been stretched about as thin as possible a human being can possibly be, from an OPP perspective. So he's got to get up to speed about what this looks like for him and the detachment, the Huron County detachment. So, you know, it's gonna be based in Wingham, but what that looks like and what partnerships are being made and whatever, that's how it's gonna be looked like, and the board will continue. The board has requested that we get quarterly or semi-annually reviews or updates, and those updates will be put in, we're hoping are being put in the report to the Police Services Board, which are also on the council report. So council shouldn't be not aware of where money's being spent and how it's being spent.
I believe Carson wanted to speak to this.
So just to follow up on what Deputy Sype said, so on the October 21st agenda, the transfer payment agreement that the board signed was included as a consent item, so it's there if you're looking for more information too. And then to follow up on the transition from Inspector Scott from Wendy Burrow, so he did mention too that the proposals that were submitted for some of his boards in Perth County were developed similar to what Wendy developed for us here, so he didn't see it being too much of a concern. But like Deputy Sype said, they would be reported back to the board periodically, and those would come to council as well.
Good, thank you. So the main expenses that we have to pay for the rest of the year under policing is that we have to pay our contract expense for Wingham to the OPP, and then Blythe and East Wawanosh we pay monthly for the 5.1 policing. So for Wingham, we've actually, in this number, we've actually paid September, and Blythe and East Wawanosh we've actually only paid till August. We didn't have the new bill at the time of printing this, so that's coming. And then for the police station expenses, we're a little bit under there right now, but we'll monitor at the end of the year. And then also we have to have some discussions, what are we gonna do with that building for next year? And basically, we can't put the expenses for the building through the police anymore, so we have to decide what are we gonna do. There'll be heat and hydro and some minimal expenses, even if we do nothing, so anyway, that has to be decided. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Marty next. So we had general government, council, and administration. Is there any other questions before I turn it over to Marty that you were wondering about? If not, okay, so Marty, we're gonna carry on with you. So,
I'm gonna do the first motion.
oh, sorry.
That the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the Director of Finance dated October 25th, 2019 regarding the September 30th, 2019 year-to-date report for information purposes.
Yep.
Can we read that? Nope. You read it. And further, that the council receive a presentation from the department heads with the update of the budget versus actuals for the period January 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2019. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin, seconder. I have Chris. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries, thank you. Okay, Marty.
Okay,
Do you want me to come over there?
it's
and-
wherever you're more comfortable, you just sit where you're comfortable. All right,
So
perfect.
now we're gonna,
Okay.
so now we're gonna go to 4.2, department updates, and we're gonna start with the fire part.
So
I really
here's-
want you to come up so we can just, no, I'm just teasing.
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay, Marty, thank you, take it away.
So, my apologies, I dove right into the expenses in my report. I'll just give a little highlight on the revenue part. So the revenue is the annual levies that all the partner municipalities pay, as well as the fire call costs that
Did you
each
have a
one
revenue slide, pardon
incurs.
me? Pardon me, did you have a revenue slide?
No,
Okay,
I
sorry,
didn't.
okay.
That's what I said, I dove right into the expenses.
Okay,
So that's the revenue other municipalities, and the user fees is mainly the fire marquee money that we get when we bill out the structure fires. And fire marquee does the legwork for us, and we get that money back through there. So both those are gonna be on target. The revenue portion for other municipalities will be over, as I explained this first slide. So since we've switched over to the new agreement, each municipality pays for their own fire calls now. And the expense on this is over. Being the first year that we went this way, we basically took an average of the previous years. And as you know, fires are not very easy to predict. So we'll keep an eye on it and use the averages through the years, but it does vary from municipality to municipality, and so they usually do balance out. So the next slide will show you the fire calls. This is to the end of August. We're always a month behind because we figure out the payroll after the month, and then it's usually a month behind. So we budgeted 50 for North Huron, 20 for Morris Turnberry, 10 for Central Huron. Now, these are fire calls only. This isn't the annual levy that they pay. ACW is still on the old agreement, which we'll be renewing in next year. So their calls are absorbed by everybody this year. So I'm showing you the actuals so far. We did have a couple major calls in Central Huron, and that's why it bumps up their numbers. Morris Turnberry was pretty much on target. Now this last month, in October, we've had a couple major calls in Morris Turnberry, so you're gonna see that number go up too. As far as North Huron goes, I think we're right on target with that. Okay, just moving forward. So what I did is I highlighted the accounts that are overspent or underspent, and I'll explain as we go through here. So the clothing, uniform, bunker gear, and I call it PPE, so that's your personal protection equipment. We're over in this, slightly over in this budget account, mainly because we have some new firefighters. And we try to reuse the gear that we have for them, but if it doesn't fit properly, we have to get new stuff. The gear does have to fit properly, so, well, they can't do the job if it doesn't fit properly. Just a side note, the bunker gear does have to be replaced every 10 years as per the NFPA standard. So we do have that program in place where are always replacing so many suits per year, and that's included in this account. The training travel workshops, we did have some confusion with this account, so it is showing it's underspent quite a bit. We, being the deputies and myself, thought that the practice nights that they do, we thought that came out of this account, but it actually comes out of the wages account, so. We'll make the adjustments moving forward and make that a correction. They did tell me that the ESDC is noticeably missing, because we did do a lot of training there. So now if we're gonna do training, we have to bring people in or we have to send them away. But we're catching up with that. The phone, fax, internet, this one is overspent as well. I could never figure out what this concept-centric networking charge was. It was a $230 charge monthly, and I could never figure it out until we got digging into it with Continuit. That charge was a charge that allowed our computers to talk from Blythe to Wingham. Continuit come in and did some changes, and they did it a different way, so we now got rid of that charge, so we won't be seeing that one. Some of the fire department accounts kind of intermixed with the ESDC accounts previously, so now that the ESDC is gone, it's all being picked up by fire. So there was a little bit of differences in budgeting going from last year to this year. So we'll have a better handle on it going forward. So this is one of those ones where it was a shared account with the ESTC. And so is this one, the copier expense. So it's a little bit over as well, but we'll get a handle on that. The inspections contracts, this account includes the fire chief expenses billed from here in East. This account's only showing the first quarter. I believe since this report, they have sent through the second and third quarter. But it's gonna be under, if not bang on yet. Radio equipment, right now it's showing more than 50% not spent. However, we took care of that. We just installed a new repeater in Wingham, which will take pretty much the rest of that amount. So we'll replace the one in Wingham this year, and we have to replace the one in Blythe next year. And we'll budget accordingly for that. The Wingham Station budget looks to be on target. Blythe Station budget, the inspections contract account, that is the rent to Cowbell, so it will be over because when we originally did our budget, we were only budgeting until November, and we've added a few months since. The FPO and North Huron only budget, and this also looks on target. So overall, I think things are gonna balance out and we're gonna be in good shape for the fire. Now, one thing I do wanna mention, we're scheduled for a truck replacement next year. We have money in the reserves. I do have to talk to Donna, and we have to decide if we're gonna have enough or not. If there's not enough money in the reserves to purchase what they need, then we'll just defer it a year, and then it'll go forward that way. Okay?
Any questions for Marty then?
Go ahead, Anita, and then Paul.
Marty, how does it work if you have to go to an accident on, say, Highway 86 or 25 when you're on a border between two municipalities? Or we just paying for that, or is that really like the middle of the road and it's open?
Yeah, so
Traffic.
what we try to do is, it's where it ends up. It's only, like you said, a border road. So if the main part of the accident is on the North Earn side, or the North Turnberry side, or wherever, that's who we bill it to.
Okay.
With Kevin?
You love the push one?
Sorry. No, my question is, the Ontario government has said they were gonna put in place a revamp of the emergency services radio systems in the province. Is that going to have any effect in the future? I guess my question is, are our fire services going to be forced into going digital because of they may change the funding format or the requirements for the fire services to be up to date on being able to talk to your agency?
So that announcement that was made by the government, that doesn't affect fire departments at all. We don't use the public service radio system. That's the police and the ambulance services mainly. They're funded by the provincial government 100%, whereas fire departments are funded by, of course, municipalities. As far as the changes in what's coming down the tubes, yes, there are changes that are coming with the dispatches. They have to be able to have the capability of doing the 911 by text, and so it's the next generation 911 they're calling it. So by 2025, all our dispatches agencies have to have those capabilities. So whether it affects us or not, it's to be seen, whether they charge us extra because of the upgrades they have to do. Owen Sound's in pretty good shape right now because our dispatch is Owen Sound and it's a police dispatch. So they're in pretty good shape already. As far as digital goes, I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that. The thing is, if one department in the county goes digital, everybody has to go digital because you can't communicate unless you have the capability of changing from digital to analog. So that's what the communication struggles are between agencies, and fire, police, and ambulance have never been able to communicate that well, just the way it's set up. We did have Huron County paramedic services are going through a review,
Yeah.
as Bernie would know. We did have a meeting with the consultants that are doing that study. And that was one of our main concern was we can't communicate with the ambulance crews that are en route. So if we happen to get to a scene first, or they get to a scene first, we can't cancel each other out or anything like that. It's mainly the other way around, would be ambulance getting there and they can cancel us, and they can't do that right now unless it goes through all the dispatch channels. That takes time, so. That's one of the things that we pointed out to the consultants that they can have a look at. So we'll see what comes about that.
Other questions or comments for Marty? Okay.
Marty, has the provincial government changed their plan as it relates to the update of training for fires crew? Like, have they provided a different outlook of when that's gonna be required as a?
Yeah, so in the original regulations that came down, the firefighter 1, firefighter 2 was gonna be mandatory for all firefighters. They took that off the table, but there is rumblings that it's eventually gonna make its way back. We haven't heard anything yet, no.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we'll move right along.
So we're gonna have the building department and have Kurt give his update next. Kurt?
Good morning.
So the slide in front of council here Indicates what we budgeted last year in 2019. We budgeted $70,000 for revenue in the building department, and actual is $78,780 and change. And zoning certificates issued, budget began 4,000, and we've received 4,800. So total revenue right now for the building department on permit fee intake is 83,580. Expenditures. The only one I listed there was really the large one, which is the agreement that North Huron has with Morris Timber for the building department. We budgeted 104,000, and we're currently sitting at roughly 70,000. So those are good numbers, in my opinion, based on the past 5 years that we've seen in the building department for North Huron. We're currently sitting at approximately a $1,300 deficit, but we did budget for almost a $40,000 deficit in the building department. So positive numbers. That's about it to report on where we're at right now.
Any questions or concerns for, go ahead, Ken.
That's really brief. Seeing there's been a large number of new buildings, permits going up, do you have an idea how many new ones have come through this year that, what are building, how many new buildings are being built this year?
New as in new residential or
Yeah.
commercial industrial too?
Just residential.
Residential? Well, in the Blythe subdivision, we will have 6 foundations in for residential homes before the end of the year, along with 2 fourplexes and a 3plex. And then we've also got the commercial development that's taking place on the edge point in here. So you're looking at 6, guessing maybe 10 to 12 for new residential. Yeah, maybe more than that, because the subdivision in Belgrade is completely full, there's no more vacant lots there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Through you, Reeve, Kirk, do you find that the two of you are adequate now as far as inspectors?
Yes, I think that complement is good. We do have an assistant in the office as well that's providing 5 hours a day. So 25 hours a week. She's being tasked with a lot, but it's working out well. Hopefully, I'd like to see that increase to a full-time position, but we'll discuss that certainly in the future. Yeah, no, things are moving along very well.
So Kurt, if I can ask, we have the Hutton Heights project that we hope will be underway late next year. Obviously into the 3rd year, we're hoping to have it. And we also, Morris Turnberry has the Belgrade subdivision. Will your staff be able to handle that, or at that point in time, are we going to look at extra staff? And then the second question would be, if it peters off 3 years later, how does that work if you have the extra staff? Well, I guess you just have to let them off.
Yeah, I think we'll monitor it.
Okay.
There's not a lot of driving time then to those 2 areas, right? They're relatively pretty close, but when we're going from Blytheville to Belmore, there's a lot of time they end up putting on the road, travel time, which takes away from inspection time certainly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no, I think we'll be fine where we're sitting now.
Great. Any other questions or comments or concerns for Kurt? Seeing none, thank you, my friend.
Okay, and then my last slide.
Oh, you have
For
another
council.
slide.
Yep,
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were done.
then I gotta go do some inspections.
Oh.
So property standards, so simple slide. We budgeted 14,300 in expenditures for property standards and bylaw enforcement, and we're currently sitting at 9,313.
So it's on target.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape as well.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns for this one? Seeing none. Last slide.
That was it.
I'm out of here. Thanks, Kurt.
Thanks for
Great
coming
weekend.
in. Have a good day.
Okay, so now we're gonna turn things over to Sean, and so Sean has a number of departments and areas to report on, so we've got his slides up here, and we'll have Sean take it away.
Thank you, Freedom Council. We'll see if we can carve through this quickly as possible. So kind of an overview of the department. I call it Public Works and Operations because we have kind of grown outside of strictly pure Public Works. This department covers roads operations, so the Public Works Department, as you know it, parks, facilities, cemetery operations, waste management, airport ops, streetlight and stormwater management, as well as the water and wastewater portion of the operation. And just to get a sense of how that's all proportioned, the chart shows just exactly what those components consist of. Now, I want to qualify right up front that when we start talking about the dollar values and year-to-date and all that kind of thing, what I did is I removed revenue. And I did that specifically because sometimes it just skews things. If you've got a fairly large revenue line, but you haven't drawn it in, it distorts the numbers. So I'll show everything to council with revenue removed, and then we can talk about revenue later. There's a separate slide. I figured at least then you'll get a handle on where we are in terms of operations, which is obviously what we have really better or more direct control over. So our total operating budget for the department is $5.3 million. And then on top of that, the capital budget associated with this department is about $4.1 million. And then all told, there's about $518,000 revenue plus the user pay piece. And that I kept that out because it's user pay, so it should balance itself out at the end of the year. So moving on, and you see, I hope this format's acceptable to council, but so for Public Works, this cost center, it's the urban and rural roads, the roadside, the ditches, the culverts, the sidewalks, the parking, the winter control, the fleet maintenance, that sort of thing. So the budget for the year for Public Works specifically is $1.8 million. Our target year to date, so that would have been as at October 15th, when the report was run, would have been $1.5 million. And we were sitting, as far as an actual goes, at $1.3 million, so we're underspent from target, with about $500,000 remaining for the year. Now, underspent could be deceptive this time of year. We're just coming out of summer. We are going into winter control, and also typically the summer tends to be just try to keep up with some of the seasonal repairs. Now we're getting into the last minute stuff. We're getting into the winter prep on the equipment and that sort of thing. So there tends to be a surge in spending as well. That being said, I do not have, there's no indication based on what I'm seeing in the budget that we would be over budget. In truth, I'm expecting to be slightly under budget. And I say that not as a bad thing. Typically, just so council knows how we approach the budgeting process, to use an air industry term, we plan for the worst and hope for the best. So I build a little bit of contingency into all of these areas to make sure that we can handle that flood event, that heavy winter, that the unanticipated issues that we deal with. That being said, as time goes on, we're taking, I know all department heads, I believe, and certainly I am taking a very close look at this, and I don't want to use the word buffer, but I'll use the word buffer, this extra piece. And if I see areas where we're consistently underspent, we'll work to reduce that. But at this point, and certainly when I go into 2020 budget, reductions are not going to be handled with a machete, they're going to be handled with a scalpel. We're not at the point where there's just a whole bunch of fat. But it's just, I want council to be aware as I go into this that, currently underspent at $208,000 for year to date, but it's not going to stay that way. I am certainly hoping that we will be underspent by the end of the year, but only slightly. The one notable item here is there is a $47,000 municipal drain line item. We were anticipating some work to take place. It didn't, but it's not going away. These are drains that we know, like the Whitfield drain. There's a couple big projects coming. We're at the mercy of the Municipal Drainage Act and its process, so basically that money will request to be put into reserves because we budgeted for the project. If it doesn't get done this year, that doesn't mean it's not being done. It's definitely going to happen. So Parks Department was an interesting one. This is year one of the new structure, and I believe that we had fairly positive results. That being said, it was an extremely steep learning curve for the department. We are certainly, we've yet to have the meeting, and that's happening, I believe, next week, where we're gonna sit down and review the year, the successes, the failures. We're gonna look at what we think we could do next year differently, and that'll be reflected in the 2020 budget. So basically, your numbers are, as you can see, the year is 166,000, target was 132, we're sitting at 130, which is pretty close to the truth. And there's 35,000 remaining. I'll probably be a little under on that one, because we're basically shutting the department down for the season now, so there's only gonna be some supervisory time where we prep for next year. So it'll be maybe a little under budget. This cost center facilities, that covers just the operation and maintenance piece of town hall, libraries, museum, daycare, and police facilities. Vicki will speak to her facilities in her presentation. We only assist there in capital. So we're not anticipating any unfavorable variances. You can see we're trending below target right now. That being said, there's a bunch of work that is happening as we speak, like the town hall building, for example. Its insulation project was completed late last week, so we're hoping to see big savings in hydro on that. But that being said, that same group that covers parks really has a focus on facilities. They're not dealing with the part of the green stuff now, so now they get to deal with the bricks and mortar. And we'll do our best to consume much of that budget. We're not anticipating any overages there. Oh, okay, yeah, and I can mention the BCA has been ordered for the police station. I haven't had an opportunity to talk to him yet, as he's been away from the office, but I'm anticipating that'll take place within the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. He's pretty quick. So you'll see a report on that before year's end, barring unforeseen circumstances. Cemetery operations, that's of course both Blythe and Wingham cemeteries. The big thing to note here is that the revenue is trending quite a bit below. We're at 46,000, and I think the target right now is about 70. So what we did, I looked at that because it's kind of curious to see the revenue trending that low, and I'll speak to it now as opposed to later, but basically what it boils down to is a fairly significant drop in plot sales, especially in Wingham this year. So that's silver linings, right? We're not selling a lot of plots this year. Same with Blythe. There wasn't very many interments there as well. So the numbers this year are trending much lower in terms of sales, both for burials and for plot sales.
Sean, I guess my question is for that, is generally a plot sale or those, are they done at the time of death, or are they done pre-exist, like, are they done years in advance?
It varies. It varies. And case in point, Barb wanted to point out, she actually just this week sold a block of 12 plots.
Okay.
And that's, a family buying, stretching the new side. So, it is a mix. It's reactive and it's proactive. Outside of that, I would have liked to have spent more time on some of the bigger ticket items at the cemetery this year. The one thing I'm very happy to say, we got that columbarium installed. And the other thing that it's pretty neat, you don't notice it, and that's a success, is the fact that we had a lot of markers leveled in Wingham. There was a long list of ones that were leaning or looking in a state of disrepair. We had Mac from Wingham Memorials come in with a budget, and he did a beautiful job straightening them up. So it's one of those things you don't notice now, because when you come in, everything looks the way it's supposed to be. On top of that, we did train a new staff person. We've got John Foxton trained in cemetery operations, which is major, because up until now, we only had the one individual who could handle burials kind of from start to finish. So that was a major win this year as far as the department goes, or the cost center. Oh, and yes, sorry, the Stone Orchard integration is progressing very well. Of course, it was authorized to purchase. We have a contract person that's working right now in the back, and she has already completed integration of all of the Blythe data into Stone Orchard, and has taken a fairly significant bite out of the Wingham piece. So we're very close to getting rid of those old parchment blinds that were used as the sole record-keeping device. And it looks really nice. You've got all the data in there. On top of that, you can pull up the map. So it's going to become a very, very useful resource, not only for front office staff for sales, but also for frontline staff when they're marking out plots and that sort of thing. So it's progressing very well. So waste management, interesting one this year. So our budget, again, revenue excluded, it's a big revenue line on this one. The operating budget is $547,000. Our year-to-date target 456 with 406 actual. I do have a bunch of invoices remaining. You'll see that we did new fencing, almost a full kilometer of new fencing around it. The other stuff was in a state of disrepair. That's been completed. We put quite a few additional salary dollars into it because we moved the cell. Part of that was to try to manage this whole leachate concern. So what we've done, if you do go up to the site, you'll notice that we were actually working on the outside closest to the road. We've moved to the inside so that we've basically got the whole mass separating us from the road. We're working to fill there this year into next, and then we're gonna have the plan is to move farther back into the property, and all of this to A, properly utilize the site, and B, the hope is that maybe that'll have some positive effect on off-site influence. So, but otherwise, it's budget remaining for the year is $140,000, and I think things are progressing well and not anticipating a budget at the landfill end. Airport ops. This one's tricky. So for this year, when I look at the, I'm expecting, and again I'll touch on revenue, I'm expecting based on the final payment for land rental, will be about $4,200 under our target for revenue, which is a big deal at the airport, of course. So right now, though, everything else is progressing well, and we should be just slightly under budget by year end. And that's based on the change in the fuel sales. It's important to note that there's a fairly large report coming to council. I would say it certainly won't be next council meeting, but either late November, possibly into December. And we'll be able to have the opportunity to talk more about the airport at that point. Street lighting, interesting one again. So you can see that the one thing to note here is this is only the billings are only to the end of August on this one as well. That being said, the actual transfer of data and billing and all of everything associated with the LED retrofit has been cumbersome to say the very least. I believe we've got it all sorted out as of about a month and a half ago, and what the administrative staff are telling me is they are now seeing an even more significant drop in our hydro bills, which is, of course, what the retrofit was all about. So last year, we budgeted for $30,700 as a transfer to reserve for 2019 to go towards the project. We're monitoring that very closely. Please don't take the numbers that are here. I'm not satisfied with them because they're not, I don't believe, reflecting the proper rates. We're going to do some more investigation over the next month or two and talk to West Ontario about it. So we're hoping, against all hope, to see a much better dollar figure for transfer to reserve for 2020.
Yeah. But we'll pay back at least the 30.
At least the 30 is going back into that project for this year.
Sean, the one question I did have is about street light maintenance now, about, flickering LED lights and a whole bunch of other things. Are those things, we're still in a warranty period, correct?
No, through you, your worship, no, the warranty period is over now.
Okay.
It just ended, but.
How ironic.
But I will say that one of the biggest things you notice right off the pin with the LED retrofits is a massive reduction in maintenance. You do get the odd one flicker, you get the odd photocell that doesn't work, But it's not like it was with the old HPSs where you got 3 calls a week about another streetlight. I think to date, and please don't quote me absolutely, but it's like 3 or 4 fixtures that we've had problems with, and a couple of them were within the warranty period, and 1 photocell. So massive decrease in maintenance requirement. Oh, sorry, stormwater, I have to come over in one cost center. So for stormwater management for this year, we're $1,158 over budget because of some additional staffing for some stormwater, some cleaning work that was required. Outside of that, the bulk of that contract is, the annual contract that we go in with the county on for catch basin cleaning. Not much to report on that one. User pay. The big one here is that this is something Donna alluded to a little earlier. There's a couple of challenges with the first off, the biggest challenge with the contract is that our year is January 1st to December 31st. This contract, for some reason, has an offset date of March 1st to April 30th, and it makes it very difficult. It's something I've talked to Veolia about, and we may come before council to talk about trying to align the year ends on these two, because it makes it a bit of a nightmare to chase. That being said, there's one area that we've really identified as tremendously concerning, and that is our energy costs. We're grossly over budgeted for energy. We're seeing the consumption's a lot lower than where we're budgeted, so I'm monitoring that, and we'll probably reduce that for the 2020 budget to better align with actuals. So that's not a bad news story.
I was gonna say, please don't tell me that's bad.
Yeah, just from a budgeting perspective, it shows, when you see a year-to-date target of 1.8 and a year-to-date actual of 1.3, I would attribute that to the energy piece and the alignment of the years.
Yeah, what do you mean with energy cost? Is that the cost to deliver the water to the,
Actually, cost for the plant operations.
Yeah.
Case in point, I believe, I may have the numbers here in front of me.
no, but they're planned operational costs.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
it's operational cost.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I haven't got user pay in front of me, but it's, there we go. We budgeted 95,000 for electricity at which one? Williams wastewater, we're at 24,000. So
It's good.
it warrants an adjustment, and that's just one of many plants. They all seem to be trending that way. So salaries and benefits, again, I think Donna touched on this earlier. They don't vary unless we're looking at an extended vacancy or something like that, which we had last year. So for this year, our overall cost for salary and benefits for Public Works is $1,319,000. We're trending right where we're supposed to be. I'm not expecting any surprises on that front. And that's for full and part-time. Except I should mention that we do have that $10,000 grant coming back. The paperwork was just finalized yesterday for that green initiative for the 2 students. So it should be just shy of 10,000 coming back, which is a positive in the coffers. I pretty much talked about revenue thus far, but as far as waste management, this one's a shocker. I shouldn't talk like that, but budget for this year was $354,000 with a year-to-date target of $295, and we're actual at $301. That's your tipping fees, your bag tags, your scrap metal, and your Ontario Recycling grant. I say it's a shocker because up until July, I had bumped it up to match where I felt we were. We had under targeted last year and had a much better year for revenue. So I made the adjustment, and we were not trending where I hoped up until midsummer, and then it kind of took off and corrected. Now, are we going to be on target for the end of the year? It'll be interesting to see because we are coming into the slower season. My hope is that people are going to get into that frenzied panic at the year end to finish projects, and we'll see some increase in tipping fees before the snow flies. but thus far, we're right on target. Cemetery, I talked about that, you can see our target was 65 year to date, we're at 46, but not really, it's a silver lining story. And as I mentioned, that, the airport, that's your year to date. When I talked about being 4,000 under, that's once we build that final installment for the land rental. So, and that's where I get the anticipated $4,000 shortfall in revenue for the airport. Now the big screen. It happens, folks, over time, font gets smaller. So, I'll quickly go through the line, unless this is more detailed than you want, you stop me if it's too much, but, so basically, these are the public works capital projects that we're dealing with right now. I think council's up to speed on where we are with public works, or sorry, the fire hall and public works garage. I was a little biased when I wrote that. So really, there's, the project as we understand it right now is on target, and we don't anticipate too many surprises when I say that. The road reconstruction, the next 3 lines, I think we should have broke that to you a little gentler than we did, but we're anticipating it to come in at somewhere around 1.5 to 1.6 for the project. So what the 600,000 that's remaining that was budgeted for 2019 is being recommended to be transferred into reserve. We do have about, it'll be close to 90 in total by year end, and that was for all the engineering work associated with that second section of Harding Terrace. So that'll get us a shovel-ready project with tender documents. And again, we hope to be talking, I really hope to be talking to you about this in December so that we can be the very first out of the block for 2020. Road reconstruction for Rutledge subdivision, there's a lot of billing to come yet, but we're in good shape on that one. If you drive past that North Street section, you'll see that it's all, it's new curb, new asphalt, it's first lift. We've got the second lift coming for next year, of course, we gotta give it that year of settling. And the sidewalk will be done at the same time, so it all connects. But I think, at this point, every indication is that we're in good shape and on target for that one. It's just not gonna be completed until next year because we need that 1 year of settling, so a request will be brought forward to carry that forward into next year, the remaining 113,000. The road reconstruction project on Moncrief is very close to completion. We need a few dry days so that we can finish kind of the seeding and the finish work there, but I don't have a tally on the project right now. It was a big job. It turned out to be a very big job, but I'm hoping that when all is said and done, that people will be very happy with the product, and then we can talk next year about next steps, you know, whether that's hard surfacing or whatever the desire council is. House and Dam, not much to report there. There's a little bit more been spent on restraining dollars, but that report was carried to council. Arthur Street top coat is complete. It came in a little bit over budget, but that of course will be split between us and Morris Turnberry. The plow truck in Blythe, we ended up, as council's probably aware, we got rid of the old truck. It had a blown engine. It was $35,000 to rebuild, which was, as far as we were concerned, more than the truck was worth. We ended up getting into a really fairly decent, very decent, low miles, low hours, Peterbilt, completely dressed with a Viking plow setup. We picked that up for, by the time we were done getting it certified and safety, I think we're at 25,000. That's with safety, new chains for the sanding system, new tires, everything ready to go. And then we sold the old one for 18,000 on GovDeals, so it was kind of a Cinderella story. We're asking though that, and this will probably come in a report later, we're hoping that remaining 13,000 on that can be transferred to reserve to handle or help with 2020 vehicle needs. The roof repair at Public Works, I'm requesting that that project be moved forward. It's a total of $69,000. The reason being, we had contractors come in. It turned out it was gonna be very close to $100,000 to do a portion of the roof. Our operations supervisor, Stu, brought a contractor in to look at going to a steel roof for the whole structure. And it was, I think we're gonna be looking at about 120 to do the whole roof, and it would be a one-time job. You're not going to this flat roof, it would be a slight, not a peak, but a slight slope.
Is this down here?
Here in Public Works. So we're gonna, that'll be presented as a 2020 project. It didn't seem appropriate to do a portion of the roof for 70 when, for a little bit more we can. And one thing we've seen with these flat roofs here, and Vicki will attest to it, you get 20 years and not much more, and then you're back at it, so.
Did you have your hand up, Kevin? No, okay, I just saw it out of the corner of my eye, I thought his hand was up. Nobody scratched their head with their hands up.
Breeze panicky.
So, moving forward then from there, okay, we bought our trackless mower, deck and trailer, that came in. The trailer purchase has been made, but the invoice hasn't been paid or anything, so we're a little under, showing a little under on that. That being said, we've done very well with gov deals on it. Cemetery Chapel, that contract was put out as a request for quote. Came in, we've got a local contractor that's actually starting it next week, so if anybody's aware of what that cemetery chapel looks like, we're hoping to see some significant improvement. They're going to clad those buttresses and then new roofing on it, so it should look like an entirely appropriate structure. Right now it looks very run down, so it'll be nice to see this one done. It'll be done by year end. The town hall kiosk and elevator upgrades, the elevator upgrade was done. That being said, I put the brakes on the kiosk because there's been a lot of conversation about what the vision is for this building, and it just didn't seem appropriate to go and spend several $1,000s on kiosk upgrades without having that broad discussion with council first. So that, I would be requesting that be moved forward to reserve for this building and this facility, regardless of what we do in the future. But the upgrades have been done, and I will say that the elevator now is brought up to a modern standard. We know that we've got an old PLC running it. If it fails, that's going to be a really uncomfortable conversation with council because there's no upgrades available. But once we did these updates, it's obsolete. Once we did these updates, it eliminated the problems, as you may be aware. There was there was problems with this, serious problems with this elevator, and now it's completely eliminated those, which is good because the theater is seeing a lot more traffic now. As I mentioned earlier, the town hall insulation project has been completed but not invoiced. We did fairly well on that one for price too. Blythe Hullett CAS procurement, again, there's a little bit of transfer to reserve funds left, and I believe that there's still some discussion with Infrastructure Ontario, so if we can just carry them forward until we're ready for that, that will be good. The Wingham CAS procurement, we did put funds in there, but based on the lab data, we're not ready to use them. That's not to say that that project is going away, so it needs to be carried forward. Inevitably, we are going to be looking at this whole CAS for Wingham. So although we're not ready in 2019, whether it's 2020 or 2021, we have to be prepared for that. So I'm really requesting that be moved forward. Wingham Standpipe VFD is, the VFD is installed, and we had talked about that quite a bit when we talked about the standpipe. The VFD is installed, Veolia is still working with the system integrator to get that all properly meshed with the SCADA system that controls the system. But the beauty is right now, if we were in an emergency situation, it's in place and it could be operated. Blythe Pump House, you may or may not have noticed, they were a bit of an eyesore in years past, so what we did is we had them painted this spring to match the use the same color scheme as was done with the community center. So we just went and said match it to this, so it's kind of standardized, although we didn't match that color for the fire hall.
It's way up by hell anyway.
we kept the fire hall very consistent with what it is now. Air exchanger is another Veolia project that's underway. I talked about Stone Orchard software, that's progressing very well. The niche wall in Wingham is done. All told, with a couple of extras that we actually at the last minute added to it, it came in $671 over budget, but if anybody's been up there, it's a beautiful structure. It really, I'm very happy with the quality of the product that we got. Summit Drive streetlights, that project is complete. You'll notice that it's only showing 6,000 budgeted against it. The remaining invoice, which I believe was about 20,000, came in, so we'll be just slightly under budget on that. Slightly under it certainly, I don't anticipate it being over budget by year end, even with West Area invoicing. The complex roof leaks, although I would have loved to be able to sit here and say that problem was resolved, it has not been. To date, we do now know what the problem is, so that's kind of a huge hurdle. That being said, we are going to request that those remaining funds be carried forward. We're hoping now, Stu has been able to find another firm that might be able to help us with the project. We may, based on what information we get out of him, I'm hoping to bring something to you this winter for a spring repair. Unless it goes into rec rate, so you may want to talk to that. But anyways, in the meantime, if we can carry that over, thanks Tom, if we can carry those funds into reserve for that project, that would be appreciated. And then the Memorial Hall renovations, there was quite a bit of money carried forward. We believe that all of the issues that were associated with that, with those funds have been resolved. And as you can see, there's a big difference in dollars, but that we think that we've tackled the icing problem. We got a really good contractor who was able to go and make some very, very intelligent changes up there to get proper airflow and proper insulation. And then there was a couple other small things that we believe have been resolved. That being said, it would be recommended by staff to carry those funds into a Memorial Hall reserve, because as you're aware, we're into a contract for operation, but we are responsible for the infrastructure there, so we need to have those funds.
Can I just touch on that one? So we spent $500,000 on that building. I think it was a $3 million project, and they had I wasn't aware they had a leaky roof or problems with it. No guarantee from whoever did the work?
No, this was outside of scope, and basically what it was is there was fairly poor ventilation in the attic, and with all the upgrades, it actually increased the temperatures in the attic, which exacerbated the icing problems. So you'll see 2 winters ago, it was actually dangerous to be around some of the corners. The icicles were huge. So what they did is they went in, did better insulation, and really significantly enhanced all the ability to breathe up there. So the temperatures dropped quite a bit despite all the additional HVAC. So we're reasonably certain that we've got it beat. Last winter we didn't have too many problems at all. So, but I think that work was outside of the upgrade.
Okay.
So, and then that's it. If there's any questions.
For the compactor on the landfill, is it transportation services or environmental services? Where does it go under? And is there a chance, if it's under transportation services, if you have some money left over there to put it towards that? Or is this another discussion?
The compactor is like the landfill is in essence a user pay type of a setup. So all the costs associated with the compactor stay in the compactor. That's the one, stay in the environmental side.
Yeah.
You'll see even I have a line item there for fuel, whereas most of the time fuel falls under the blanket.
Yeah.
We keep compactor that's separate. Yeah.
All right, and I have another question. The Wingham Theatre does all kinds of shows now and has a really bigger use of the theatre and the whole hall. Are they being charged rent or anything, or because there's more wear and tear on the elevator and that?
And actually, Vicky can speak to that, but yes, they are. She handles all the bookings and
Yeah.
they pay their fees for the use of that as well as for the.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, last slide.
That was it. No more.
Thanks, Sean.
Reed, a couple-minute break, or you guys okay? We have Vicky and Val. Val's coming up next, and so we have Vicky and Val left to go.
How's the council feel? Continue or do you want to take a 5-minute stretch? 5-minute stretch.
A minute anyways.
Yeah.
Val, running. Do you want to stay over there, or do you want to? I can stay. Yeah, nice point. Okay, yeah, right there. There's coffee and.
Okay, we're gonna have had our 5-minute break and we're gonna go back at it. And Dawn, I'm just gonna simply hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Reed. Okay, so next up on the agenda today is Val from the Children's Department, and she's gonna give you an update as to where things are at in her area.
Okay, council, so, just a couple of things to bring to your attention. Our revenues are slightly lower, particularly in childcare, because I have been without administrative assistant for quite a long time. So our fee subsidy submissions are completed, but they didn't go in as early as they usually do. So we're they have all been submitted now, and we are waiting on approximately 22,000 in revenue from our county counterparts. So it does look lower, but we do have funds that just have not shown up yet on the budget line. So yeah, we usually about 11,000 a month in the child care, the main center for sure that we get that subsidized cost of revenue. I wanted to touch base on last year, we get late funding grants. So on November 8th last year, we received $65,324.79 as an expansion grant. So you see that they fund these dollars late in the year. They don't really tell us ahead of time what we may be getting. I think my understanding is that the dollars that we get flowed late in the year are potentially dollars that they receive from a level of government that where you're either flagged for subsidy for families or for renovations and health and safety grants and such things. And if those are underspent near the end of the year, they kindly flow them to us. But they are unexpected and I cannot plan or prepare for them because they don't tell us. So you'll see in childcare, we have the 65,000 showing that we brought forward from reserves. I haven't earmarked it potentially for anything because I felt like that's something we can decide at the end of the year again, whether or not we need it to offset our costs or whether or not we can put it back into reserves for a potential bigger project later on. What they flow it for, and I just think it's important to keep highlighting to you what they keep mandating to us. So it was to increase access to early years and childcare programs and services, to ensure a more affordable early years and childcare system, establishing an early years workforce strategy, so that goes to recruitment and making workplace more attractive because they are helping us with that. Determining a provincial definition of quality in early years, so that's upgrading our delivery services so that they reflect quality. Developing an approach to promoting inclusion in the early years and childcare settings, creating an outcomes and measures strategy, and increasing public awareness of Ontario early years and childcare system. So very broad definitions when they hand us this money. I did send a report in March as they had requested, and have heard no further follow-up. I asked Catherine regarding whether or not it met their standards. Catherine is the one who flows the dollars to us from the county, and she says, I haven't heard from anyone, so as long as they're happy, then we're happy. So everyone seems to feel that whatever we have done within the year meets those standards, because we are always advocating and upgrading, trying to recruit new staff and promote public awareness of our programs. So currently we haven't used that, but we are sitting at an operating deficit. What did we anticipate? I'm just trying to look here. So with our buildings, piece included in there, it's currently sitting at approximately 91,000. Again, we're short some revenues, but, so part of that 65,000 could be put towards offsetting costs. They also talked about using licensing of stock, creating more space, which we are talking about with council already, for Goliath, and I have taken that forward to the county as well, and they seem very supportive of that idea. They seem interested in putting us on their agenda for future funding as we move forward into the 2020 and 2021 years, so. The only thing we could not use that money for is for staff bonuses, so. And we did, I think, you as council, we did a really good job of not increasing childcare fees for 3 years, but they are understanding and accepting that it's probably a better plan for keeping childcare affordable to keep moving ahead with the increases, so they are quite happy with that. So I suggest that, yeah, we consider returning to the reserve for any capital projects upcoming. That would be my best recommendation, because I always feel in childcare, you never know what's gonna break, like all the facilities people and public works, like you just don't know what the next big expense is going to be, whether it's the replacement, I don't know how long now our air exchange system has been in there, things like that, so I'm always quite happy to be able to have an amount to put into reserve in case we have any unexpected costs. You could use it to offset costs in your early on budget. You could use it to offset instead of increasing rates in 2020. Or you could use it to offset the operating costs for the main center. But I think as we move forward in the slides, you'll find that our Maitland River is probably going to be able to pick up the slack again. So I'm just putting those out there for thoughts and ideas as we move forward to the planning for 2020. I want to make you aware again that there's always this chance of the possible late funding coming in again. One other year, it's November 8th, we received late funding on December some years. Again, it's just their way of making sure the funds are made available to the communities and not returned to the government. So we await their things, but we have no indication of what it might look like. Our early learning site, initially I talked to you in the early months last year about the fact that we were going to have to start paying rent for the use of our rooms up at Sacred Heart. Are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing that we haven't got a bill.
I know, so, again, I'm not going to go reaching out to pay bills if people don't send us an invoice or if they don't tell me how they want paid. So we have received no invoice for the budgeted rent for this program, so again, it's quite under. We'll see if it comes at year end, we'll see what the plan is moving forward. And again, I'm not even 100% sure if it's coming from the county or if it's going to come from the school board itself. So I have received nothing to date. In early learning site too, I just want to let you know that with the food costs that we have up there, the system we have in place is that the staff purchase their snack supplies for that program up there. However, the main center does send up hot lunches each day to the off-site location. Typically what we do in the past is budget to bill them $2.50 a meal, and that's to help offset the cost of the heat hydro, the kitchen supplies, and the cook costs. So that has not been done at all this year yet, so you will likely see a transfer where we are billing them, because I think it's important to track how much it costs to feed them up there as well. So it's more accurate than just letting the main center pick up all the meal costs. So we will be doing a transition at the end of the year to even that up, and perhaps it will be over, and then that allows me to know whether or not I need to budget more in the food costs for the early learning site. Revenues exceeding.
Oh, sorry. I flipped it.
That's okay, I'm just, currently the revenues are exceeding expenses by 13,000, and those dollars, again, if you look at all 4 of the sites or all of our programs packaged together, we are over, we have a deficit in the main center, however, we have a surplus so far of 13,000 in the early learning site. So that can be used to offset the operating costs in the main center. And then you can flip. Oh, also at early learning last year, they received almost 14,000, the same as the daycare grant, to work towards the expansion. And we have got that room. I did get the playground stuff done. We do have our new fence going in. I think it's in progress. But we are still looking to open our 16 extra spaces up there, which should increase revenues as well. We will have a bill coming in for our fencing portion because we asked for some revisions to what the school board was doing up there so that we could have 2 separate playgrounds so that we can put these extra children up there. But this funding could be moved forward as well into reserves to help us get supplies and equipment to open up a new playground at that site. Then we can move to Maitland River. And this one, I honestly don't even know how to budget for the revenues for this program. They just seem to really love this program. Like, it's a high need program as far as what the families are looking for. So the reason it is the most cost effective in all of our programs is the ratio. So we have 1 to 13 for the JKSK children, we have 1 to 15 for the grade 1 and ups, compared to 1 to 3 in our infant rooms. So that's why it is your money maker. It's why it's the easiest one to have surplus in. But we're looking at approximately 66,000 right now for offsetting costs towards the child care center too. So Sacred Heart before and after still remains revenue neutral, and this is why we break down our programs separately, so we can help track whether or not they're viable and whether they're functioning at a positive level. So this one is doing all right. It's always been our lowest one, and I'm actually really happy this year it has finally started to grow. And I think that's because the children who attend early learning up there are transitioning directly into that school. And we haven't had as many children going into that school, but their numbers seem to be really positive right now too. So we've had a lot of JKSKs using our service up there, and it sat at like between 8 and 10 for a long time, and now we're between 15 and 20. So the numbers for revenue don't look like it, but this fall has really seen a big jump in it. So we can look to see for next year if it's going to do better. And our early on budget that you look at, it's always important to remember that this is 100% funded by the County of Huron. So we are contractors with the County of Huron. This budget is to provide it so that we do Ontario early on programs for the north end of the county. These are the programs that you may see advertised where the parents stay and play, and it's about training parents and giving parents information on child rearing and helping them learn parenting. We are currently overspent on program supplies. That is because we moved locations. So they've been revamping and upgrading. So we are now moved into the Royal Oaks building. We are offering the early on programs out of that building. It's working really well for the collaboration between the community agencies. So we have the seniors program there. So they are going down trick-or-treating there, dressing up. And the health nurses have been sending the families down that need extra support because the health nurses are located there at Royal Oaks as well. I probably will be able to transfer around funds to make sure. My goal is always to 100% capitalize on those dollars. So if I am a little bit over, I will offset it with one of my other budgets. But I really always want to make sure I spend that budget because it is completely funded and not revenue generated. With all the 4 programs or 5 programs together, it does look to me that we will be revenue neutral again. And with the capacity dollars, we could use them to offset any shortages, but I again think that the revenues from the school age program should be able to keep everything revenue neutral. So I would recommend any of that capital building dollars or capacity building dollars be moved to reserves. Because I think we're going to get more again.
Any questions for Valerie?
Just for my own information, what is the Royal Oak Building?
Royal Oaks Building is the old Wingham Public School.
Oh.
And, so it currently houses the doctor facility, so it's a really nice community collaboration. And as far as early on goes, we were supposed to be like a community hub for parenting services, so it really fits perfect up there. I like it up there a lot.
And sorry, Valerie, what will be the total number of children there when all is said and done?
So the early on is the come and go, it's a not paid for service, it's a parent programs, but the early learning where we're moving to take over extra space, we'll be moving from 16 preschoolers up there to 32 children in general. So I'm hoping to put toddlers up there because we're having a hard time moving through the babies fast enough to keep up with the demand. So that's my goal, is to create 16 or 15 toddler spaces up there. So you'll be going from 16 licensed spaces at Sacred Heart up to 32.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is I think the schools are also being a very, they seem to be a very big advocate for before and after school in the sense that children are there. And, that's the sense where, when we put, I'm just talking through experience, when we talked, and when I put my youngest daughter in, when we were there for bringing 3-year-olds to school, they physically had an application that says, do you want to have before and after school, and what do you think you'll maybe use it for? Where I don't know that has been an advocacy before. So, Sacred Heart might have had some of that because of that. I think in this day and age, I don't see before and after school program ever going away. It's only gonna get more. And as families, there's the day and age where you have a family member stay home with their children until they're entirely in school. I don't see that in today's society. 2 family incomes, cost of living is where it is. You need 2 family incomes in order to survive in today's marketplace. So I don't see before and after school going away, and I only see it going in a greater sense. So, from a municipality perspective, that funding that late funding, in my mind, is always a great place to keep it in the back burner to say, when we need expansion dollars for other programs or whatever the case may be, then we have an opportunity to use that to our advantage, because they've given such broad guidelines as to what it is. Then why pigeonhole ourselves into and using it to offset costs? Because in all honesty, it should be user pay. It really should be, and the taxation should not be hitting it, because all honesty, it should be user pay.
Through you, Reed, can I add to that? One thing I think is important to remember with these off-site locations, I think they're very viable ways to do childcare in other institutions, and I'm just gonna throw that out, that, well, some of them aren't charging us rent, and definitely, the public school system, because we're a contractor with them, and they requested us to be there. We don't pay heat up there, we don't pay hydro, we don't pay custodial costs. We are receiving free accommodation to care for our children in those facilities. So the off-site locations are really cost effective. You're not putting roofs on their schools, you're not paying to upgrade the heating systems. It's a good way to do service without having to spend capital costs. So any ways we can look at going into existing places that are offering reasonable rents, that is a really smart move for council to consider too.
And I would just follow up to that is there's a reciprocal agreement. This is exactly why school boards and municipalities have these agreements, because it's in the best interest of both to utilize the buildings that we have in the best opportunity to use them. So those rooms up before and after school, they're not being used otherwise. So you have them for that exact reason, and no different than when we have programs in our swimming pool and a whole bunch of other things that we offer. And we're not charging the school to have it, because it might as well somebody use it as opposed to sitting empty. So I think those are things that we obviously have, and it benefits both organizations to utilize the capital dollars that they have been given by ratepayers of the entire province, that make sure they're being used.
Just to follow, just follow up with what Trevor said, yeah, it's not really free, although it is, we have the agreement, and Vicki may want to speak to this later, or now. We allow them to use our swimming pool free of charge, I believe our arena free of charge, so you work back and forth.
Yeah.
So you work back and forth. The question I have, Val, is, so every once in a while, every 3 or 4 years, we have to look at jumping the rates up, and then we don't, and then we'll wait 3 or 4 years or whatever. Did you ever think about going cost of living year after year after year and just make it smooth?
I have always, since I came back, done an increase annually until the last 3 years, because we were receiving such large packages of dollars to offset those fee increases. But like I said, I think the head of social services that I just met with this week, she sees the importance of raising rates regularly as well, so that it's not so shocking to the families to receive a $3 increase. So always we had, up until the last 3 years ago, and I am recommending that we start moving forward again with small increases annually, just to make sure you don't want to get behind, because then it's too hard to catch up.
Shock to us then.
Yeah, it's a shock to everybody, so I think, the thought was, but they didn't realize then how hard that is to refix, right? Like,
So we're going to put it up X amount this year because we have to play catch up, but then after that, you're considering just doing cost of living?
yeah, probably, it's approximately it always worked out to about 50 cents a space,
Yeah.
no matter where they were, and that's so palatable to the parents
Yeah.
compared to a large jump.
Yes, okay.
So we do have a plan in place for January, and then I would recommend annually moving that forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Val? And you didn't have another slide, Val?
I don't know, I don't think so.
Thank you very much. Dawn, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to head into Vicki's presentation. So Vicki, please take it away.
Thank you, Don. So, looking at our budget and everything overall, the report that Donna gave, it certainly shows you kind of, there's a all-encompassing recreation services type of thing, but Sean did touch on the things, because we are in that transitional process, so, just going back to what was presented to council before, we don't look after everything that is recreation, for instance, like the parks and things are under Sean, so I focused on the areas that we are looking after, and just on expenses and revenue. I made a slide here just about some key points to keep in mind. I just thought of something that I didn't put on there that maybe I should have. You guys are probably tired of hearing it from me, but we are at a situation where we have aging infrastructure. So we are having breakdowns and maintenance issues and things. And I realize this slide was very focused on programming and things, but I'll say it again, because it does come through when you're looking at our budgets and money that's been set aside and things like that. So just some things to keep in mind. Donna mentioned this before, recreation, operational costs vary from season to season. Right now, this September is the fall season is our busiest season because the ice goes in. So, and not only the ice going in, it affects all of our operational costs, our revenue generation, but we also have programs that it affects as well because we're ramping up for that year. These summers tends to be a little bit more steady, and costs go down because obviously we don't have the ice plants to run. So I just wanted to point that out headed into this because you're going to hear it again as we go through the slides. Programs do run on a cost recovery basis for the most part. Aquatics is a little bit different, but all the other programs do run on cost recovery. We do introduce new programs throughout the year based on interest, so if we have a lot of interest coming forward, then we will introduce it. It will not be part of your budget that you've seen, but we offset that from the revenue that we get from those programs and things. So, I know for a fact in here, there is a couple things that we've done that did affect the budget, but then we were able to offset it with revenue. And then also the thing is, keep in mind is that, when we do plan programs, we're budgeting for that revenue and the expenses, but if there's insufficient registration numbers and things, then they're canceled. And that is depicted in our budget as well. So as we move forward, then we're gonna take a look at Blythe Campground. Currently, the revenue is under budget. What we found is that there is a decrease in attendance at the large special events and one-off rentals and things. So that, the way that things work is that the groups actually do the collection on the campground spaces and things, and that's what's coming through, is that there's a decrease in their events. So, there are expenses are also under budget. And just pointing out that, we've had to do fewer repairs and haven't had to do, rent machinery to do those repairs at the campground, because, usually with repairs at the campground, it involves digging up, the earth and things to repair water lines or whatnot like that, so, both of those are coming in under budget.
If I could just ask you, at the top of your head, you said the big events are not being used. Which would be the top one? Do you know off the top of your head?
Threshers' attendance was down, so was Barney's.
Or both of them? We're talking, and again, maybe just off the top of your head, 10% or 50% or?
Just a second, Your Worship.
And it is catching you off guard, so if you can't find it, it's.
No, it's okay, I don't mind referencing it. So, right now, we're just looking at admissions or rentals for the campground, we're approximately $3,000 under in revenue.
Okay. And that's for the black camp, okay.
Yeah. But also in looking at that, our overall expenses are down considerably as well. So, we had budgeted $73,000 for, and keep in mind, this is into the season for the campground, but we had budgeted $73,000 for operations. And actually, I'm just gonna correct myself on that, because I was looking at budget to date instead of the actual budget for the year. We are down approximately $6,000 in revenue on the campground.
Just refresh my memory, what was the total revenue expected?
22,000.
Okay, so.
Okay, we're 22,150 and we are at 15,888.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but we are equally down in expenses. So we had budgeted $73,385 in expenses. If the actuals are coming in at 35,000, almost $36,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on then, I caught with Donna here. Sorry. That's okay, I had a different screen up, so. So the Blythe and District Community Center, so I've broken it down based on the different areas. Revenue for the Blythe Arena is being shown under budget or coming in under budget. That's only because we just started the ice season. So the ice plant and ice rentals didn't start until October, so we haven't done any invoicing as of yet. I think so. It's just started. The other thing to keep in mind is that the contribution from West Turnberry will not be received until year end.
If you don't mind me asking, what is their contribution?
Morris Turnberry, I believe it's
17.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was 15, it's 17,000.
Okay, thank you. For Blythe only.
Blythe Arena expenses, full-time salaries are slightly under budget. I'm not quite sure why, because that should be pretty standard, and it's gonna require us to do a little bit more checking on that. We haven't done as many repairs and maintenance accounts coming in under budget. However, we did just have some repairs that had to be made at the beginning of the month because we had some issues with the dehumidifiers. Both dehumidifiers had to be repaired, as well as the ice resurfacer. So we are expecting that one to come in under budget, but electricity, water, everything is showing under budget at this point. but it's because it's seasonal usage. We don't have the bills in yet for the ice season. So we're not anticipating anything to be obscure there.
Or you nod at me when you want me to.
Oh, that's okay. The Blythe Hall, that's an interesting one. So the revenue for the Blythe Hall is considerably under budget, as is the expenses, and this is the one I really want to draw your attention to. Revenue for the hall, I believe we had budgeted around, it was around $10,000.
Yes.
10,000, we're coming in around 6, yeah. So there are a few more rentals to come for the rest of this year, but what was really concerning when I looked at it was the expenses. So we had budgeted $72,000 in expenses to operate that facility. We are currently around $29,000, $30,000. So it's, the revenue being lower is indicative of the, it affects the expenses is what I'm saying. So the lower expenses are also indicative of the fact that we are having reduced usage or lower usage of the facility. So, as I indicated on the slide, we really need to consider maybe repurposing that facility.
So this is the Blythe Hall at the arena.
The hall,
Okay.
upstairs
Upstairs.
portion that we, a year ago when we did the facility tour, we had talked about potential uses, other uses for that part of the building.
So our expenses are 30,000 this year, and what were they last year? How much did they jump then?
Not jump, they
Down,
went down,
down.
yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize, your worship, I changed the format on this, so it's not in order with the budget, because I tried to lump all of
No,
life
it's okay.
together and things, so I'm just here at the arena right now. So the hall itself, for last year, the expenses did come in at 64,000 last year.
So it's
But revenue was also higher, at 16 and things, so, yeah. So we are seeing a decrease in revenue, but a decrease in expenses as well.
What do you mean 64,000 and we're taking in 16,000 for the cost?
It is,
For,
it is, but I was really, when going through this exercise, I was really concerned though when I actually looked at the actuals on the hall itself, at budgeting the actuals that coming in at 72, and it being at 29, that was a bit of an eye-opener for me as to, we really need to take a look at this.
so you're gonna see a breakdown of where those dollars are spent. I don't have my computer, it's in a repair shop behind you.
And certainly right off the top, I can tell you here that, because there hasn't been as many rentals in there and things, our staffing costs for it are down too. Because we staff the facility or clean the facility, the more usage, the more cleaning and maintenance that's required.
Yeah.
So that's certainly one of the things that's being affected there.
So just having said that, and I won't dwell any longer
No,
after
no,
this.
it's okay.
But we have staff on full-time that do that. We don't hire on extra staff duty to clean.
We have one full-time, sorry, Your Worship,
Yeah.
we have one full-time staff person
That's what I thought.
at Blythe.
Yeah.
And then we have 2 part-timers.
Okay. So the part-timers' hours would vary depending on the usage of that, or the part-timers come in at the same amount year after year after year?
It varies depending on usage,
Okay.
and it also, keep in mind is that they're not specifically for the hall, but for the entire complex.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so they're, we've got a 7-day-a-week operation
Yes.
occurring down there, so that's why we need the part-time staff to help
Yeah.
supplement it, but the scheduling is done based on what our rentals are.
Yep, okay, thank you.
So,
sorry.
Go ahead.
This was a discussion last budget time during and the sense that the fact that we're budgeting, if you look at the budget, we were budgeting a $62,000 loss on that piece of real
Yes.
estate up there. Where that real estate could be used for something else, by somebody else, even us, whatever, that may not represent a $62,000 loss. We are continually gonna see And that was the $62,000 loss is based on the usage. Obviously, if the usage goes down, the loss is gonna go down, but it's still gonna be a loss. There is no way that's gonna be a positive unless the usage goes to a place where you can manage the usage with the staff that's already there at the time. And generally, the usage is gonna be after the full-time person has went home. So you're bringing in part-time staff anyways. So I think that, I truly believe that discussion, we started the discussion last year during budget time. Vicky is reiterating the discussion about what we need to think about, what even staff and council as a collective whole need to think about what can we use that area for. The problem that the ignorance is it's in a facility that is there, and repurposing that facility will require some changes in how the facility is accessed, if you wanna repurpose it, or how it's funded. And those are all questions that we have to make before we can repurpose.
Just before I go to you, Kevin, where I'm going with this is $62,000 a year for staff in there, we could paint the walls every week. So what's going on? I'm gonna be honest, so what are they doing for 62,000 or 32,000?
Through your worship, that is not staffing costs.
No.
That was our overall expenses.
Okay.
Okay, so staffing costs, if we wanna talk actually about staffing costs, was budgeted at $8,000.
Oh, okay, I
Okay,
feel better already.
Yeah, that was sorry about that, I'm so sorry,
Come on,
that was
guys, you could paint the
confusing.
walls every day for 60,000.
No.
Thank you very much.
No, yeah, so the budget, it was budgeted for $8,000, in comparison to last year's, $8,000 is for full-time allocation of staff, and then we budgeted $13,007 for part-time, it's broken out that way. It was comparable to, we had reduced it actually from what the budget was last year, and things, in trying to, help with, the overall goal of reducing taxation and things. We would certainly, we're gonna take a really hard look at this particular budget this year, and reduce those costs that are budgeted, and reduce our predictions on costs and things, so that it better reflects what our actuals are. But it's so hard to predict on usage, it really is, and things, and what our revenue is gonna be when these events, their attendance is going down. But I do believe this is something, Deputy Sype has referred to, that something we do need to look at is there something else that we could be utilizing that space for that, whether it be, I'm gonna throw Val under the bus here and say for daycare, or our discussion also last year was the library, because we are paying rent for the space on the main street, so. Just throwing it out there, and I think, we could do some brainstorming about this, and who knows what kind of ideas might be out there, but we certainly could possibly look at that.
That's great, you and Val can have that conversation, I like that idea. Go ahead, Kevin.
Through your, I'm glad we're pulling things apart as far as costing each individual room. Is there a reason why in the Wingham Arena, the hot stove lounge isn't pulled out as a separate item, much like you're doing the hall, and doing individual pieces of that facility out, and which one's making money and which one is? Well, exactly, I think to
Very good.
exasperate a certain entity.
Through your worship, I inherited this, to be quite honest. When we get to the northwest, well, when we get to the north, we do not pull the meeting room out in Blythe at all. So it's not pulled out separately, where that's a meeting room, the hot stove lounge is a meeting room in Wingham, but we do pull out the other components of Wingham, which you'll see in this, we're gonna talk about this further. So we're gonna talk about the operational costs for the pool, for the fitness center, for the arena, up at Wingham as well. And we've separated out, and again, this was inherited as to how my predecessor did things, but programming is one budget, facility operations is another, and for each of those cost centers. I think so, it was just
I
something.
just don't find it holds each in its own light that way.
I'm open
I
to change.
take kind of aback on the negativity being put on one piece of a whole structure when that's not dealt with in any of the other structures that we currently have.
So I'm
Through
gonna,
your worship, it
Yeah.
is though, you'll see, because we do the same thing for the pool facility, the same thing for the fitness center. It's just, but we don't do the meeting rooms. So hot stove lounge is a meeting room, just like the media.
But they're used for the same thing.
But we don't pull the Blythe meeting room out as a separate entity, is what I'm saying.
The meeting
And that's why
room
we
is
don't do the hot
downstairs.
stove
Yeah, the
lounge.
little thing for 12 people to sit in.
Yeah.
Same thing as the hot stove lounge is for 12 to 15
It's not a
people.
hall.
No, but they do yoga and other recreational money-making things out of that room as they do in Blythe, at the top of the hall. It'd be used for both the same thing.
so I'm gonna
But you don't
suggest,
pull out the stove lounge, but you pull out.
yeah, I'm gonna suggest that Vicky take this back and she's heard the council speak about this and the concerns, because I'm in agreement with you. And I'd like you to have a look at that, and then we'll get back together because I see it the way you do, Kevin. So let's have a look at that and see what we can do with that. As Vicky said, she inherited this from her predecessor, so she's willing to, she's open to thoughts, so yes, that's a very good point.
I just found it was the only thing that was pulled out and separate and dealt with quite heavily.
Through your worship, this is, the way this is, the budgets are set up here is a bit different than what I was used to previously and things, and I think Donna and I have had that conversation because they are broken out by cost center and things like that, so it is a bit different than what I'm used to as well. There was a lot of thought given to this about percentages, so what happens is when certain bills, a lot of the bills come in, there's a certain percentage, I'll use Wayman particularly, but Blythe is set up the same way, that there's a percentage of it that goes to the arena, I'm using Blythe for the arena expenses, and then there's a portion that goes to the hall. It's a percentage of the overall cost, because we're not able to break that down into individual costs that are, say, for like electricity and things like that. So it is different, but I suggest what we do for one, we do for the other, and things, because it is hard to do, but I'm not picking on them. I don't want anyone to feel that way. I'm just, it was a topic that came up when we did our facility tours, and I'm just bringing it to the forefront. That really is all it is, because we have been trying to, you'll find out in the slides a little bit later, we have been doing some outreach programs in Blythe to try to utilize that facility for some programming.
Thank you very much, Vicky.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No, I just, if I would be surprised if the numbers weren't basically the same if you were to pull in the Knights of Columbus Hall and integrate those numbers into how much it is actually used versus staff time that it would take to do it, that it would be much the same. Is the rec department open to having the same kind of an agreement in Blythe as they do in Wingham, like selling off that hall to
Community,
a community group?
Through you,
Yeah.
your worship, I'm certain that if there was a group that came forward, it could be considered.
Just trying to compare it to.
If I may make a point. So, to your point though, Kevin, I understand what you're saying is, but I think both Vicky and Sean have found that when they came here, our budget is broken down into way more detail than what most municipalities separated out. Maybe too much detail. I think that's what, like in a lot of cases, like just exactly what they're saying is, so down at the complex, we have it broken down into the pool, the arena, the fitness, the Knights of Columbus Hall, and so then, and because each of those pieces, it's the same at Blythe Hall, there's no meter on each one of those. So we've had studies done through external sources that gave us the guidelines what those breakdowns should be to separate out those costs for the cost centers. So as I said, we're splitting Blythe 50-50 between the hall and the arena. But, but the overall point is not to pick on the hall and your whole point is to get us thinking, what's the best use of that space and go from there. So it certainly is a timely topic. But just to finish that off, I just wanted to say, so we're gonna be asking at year end, there's going to be money here that's going to be left in the budget that we'll be asking to transfer to reserve for investigation for some of these new uses. So this money we're going to end up with less of a deficit this year than what we budgeted for, so we'll ask to put it forward. And then it gives you a bit of money if you have some, once you get an idea of what you may want to do with this, then you might have a little bit of money if you need to renovate or something. So anyway, that'll be a year-end discussion as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, well, my purpose for the, bringing that up was just I'm not oblivious to to our over-service recreation that we have an abundance of that we have to look at. I just don't want to see a certain portion of something being taken out and put into a dim light over a number of years when we do decide to do something, maybe a reduction in some of those services, that it's been picked out for so many years under a different light than any other.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see one facility being targeted over another.
Yeah, good pointed and well noted.
Thank you. Okay, so then, Vicki, if you want to go on to.
So the next slide then deals with the concession vending revenue. As you know, we haven't been operating concessions, but that is how it's labeled in the budget and everything. So our revenue is considerably higher than anticipated for the use of the vending machines and things. So our revenue is up. And our budget line for expenses, our materials and supplies for those machines is up as well because they've been doing so well. I just want to point out that with the reopening of the booth, that will affect the revenue. Like I'm anticipating in 2020 that will go down a bit, but it looks really good right now. Like we're covering our expenses and things. So now we're going to move on then to the West Cass Community Complex. With this, I did break it down. The budget is broken down the same way. It's just I tried to lump things together, making our comments and stuff. So in your budget, you'll see that there's terms like aquatic program revenue. That is strictly on the program itself. It does not have any facility operational costs in there. That's actually handled under the facility itself. Pool is, you'll see in just a second under pool facility, but just referring back to our budget, it is broken down by cost centers in the budgets. So under aquatic program revenue, admissions and program registration is above average for this time of year. We're doing well there, but we are below average in memberships. We can look at doing a campaign to try to increase that for year end. But at this point, we are below average. Rentals are being shown below average. However, we just started up again the fall program. Again, it's seasonal usage. So we have a number of programs or rentals that come in the fall, whether it's Effie Medill coming in to do their gym classes or one of the other elementary schools or Special Olympics and Sacred Heart. There's a lot of them that come in. And the rentals the rental fees for those rentals have not yet been invoiced and things. So no concern there in our rentals on that, and it's only on the membership side of things that we are below average. Just moving on to aquatic program expenses. The expenses are on target. Materials and supplies are slightly under budget at this time. But usually that ramps up here in the fall again because we do provide the service for our ideal location for birthday parties. And that is a rental that comes in, and so we do have expenses associated with that because it's a package. They're renting the facility. We arrange for a cake to come in, those types of things, so, we're not concerned about that at all. Now, this is where it's broken out, so pool facility operations, that's a separate budget in your township budget, so we are coming in slightly under budget at this point. No concerns about it, it's seasonal operation, fall, we ramp up our programs, in the fall, and, therefore, there's things such as, chemicals for the pool and things that you'll see an increase on, and things, because there's increased usage for it. Equipment repairs and maintenance is considerably under budget right now, but that is certainly not going to be the case at year end, because we are going to try to allocate as much as possible from that account to help offset that Dectron compressor costs, the emergency replacement we just had to do, which by the way is complete. And to offset the money that we needed to reallocate from that boiler replacement. We had asked for that, so.
I think the one positive that I read of that is nowhere on there do I see liners.
20 years later.
We spent a significant amount of time to not have liners in that pool anymore. And, as much as we talk about infrastructure and the other repairs that we're gonna be seeing with some of that stuff, those are the types of high dollar costs that we need to continue to look at, because the paybacks of those costs are going to help us in the long term. Councils before us, Bernie probably is aware of it, like, we were spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on liner repairs. If it wasn't annually, it was every other year. So, those types of things, I think, by having us do those larger projects, and yeah, we have to pay for them, find the capital costs, but it's gonna help our repairs costs going forward in the future. So, the pool is gonna cost us money. Let's not call a spade a spade. It is not a money maker. You're never gonna make money on having that pool. But I think the way we utilize it is the best we can at this point with the challenge that we have with other services that we have on the grant side.
Next on our list here is fitness programs. Again, this is not the facility costs, the facility operations of the fitness center, it's just the programs. So revenue is on target, most expenses are on target, part-time wages are a little bit over budget, but that's a result of something I asked staff to do. One of the things that I noticed when we came here is we were not doing anything in Belgrade and July. So I talked to staff about it, and they said, well, they never could run anything. They wouldn't get the participation and things, and I said, well, I would like to see us try it. So as a result, what we did was we moved some programs out of the center, out of the Hot Stove Lounge, down there to just try to get the interest going. So it was a bit of an outreach thing. It's been very successful. And we had members who were no longer coming from that area up to the complex, but attending in Belgrade, but now they want more programs. So, which is a good thing. So we are implementing some new programs. It did result in being a little bit higher in the wages and things, but we're also now, these programs are cost recovery. It will be open to the members who have memberships at the complex itself, but there are also people who don't want that fitness center membership that are going to pay for those programs. So I'm seeing it as a very good positive that we are getting that participation and we're getting good feedback from that. There was an article in the paper, I know about a month ago, stating that we're doing it. Belgrade has really expressed an interest. There's a group down there as now they've started up a web page and to get interest in coming to the programs and things. So I just don't, I think for me, I didn't want it to seem that we were only, the fitness programs are only for people in Wingham, or you had to come to Wingham, and I'm like, well, why can't we? Why can't we offer a program down there? So yes, we're going to be coming in a little bit higher on the part-time wages, but we're anticipating it to be offset from the revenue. So I hope that's okay with council. I took a little bit of latitude there in doing that. But in the end, I'm hoping that it's gonna be a positive thing, it seems to be received well.
I honestly think it's the best thing we've ever done, in all honesty, to break down the discussion about things being Blythe, Wingham, East Wallenosh, or Belgrade. We have these facilities available to us, let's use them, and make it convenient for the residents in where they live. Travel is not easy in this day and age, so we have the ability to move things around, let's do that and utilize that support. And I guess the history has been, we haven't been able to do it because the participation has been low. But I would suggest the community, which it has changed since we've tried to offer that. So I think it's a great idea. I completely applaud the initiative in order to do something like that because I think it was starving for it. And I think we're gonna reap the rewards of satisfaction and potentially more utilization of the facilities we already have because now they want more. They're getting a taste of it, now how do we give them more?
Yeah, I'll add to that, Vicki, and I'm sure I speak for all of council and the rest of our staff, is thank you for taking that courageous step. Thank you for sticking for it, and this is what we've been looking for as a council and a community. We're very proud of you.
Thank you, your worship. Thank you. But I can't take, it was just an idea that I was just trying to understand. Really, it's the ambassadors in the community. I don't think it would be as successful if it wasn't for the support of the community. We have members in the communities, particularly in Blythe, that are very supportive and getting the word out and encouraging people to come. And now Belgrade, it's starting to happen. So we're very fortunate in having that support, that community support and interest down there and things, because I think that's really what's making it successful.
Thank you very kindly, and thank them for us too.
On the next slide, then we have fitness center facility operations. Looking at the budget, expenses are on target, coming in a little bit under budget just on equipment rental, maintenance, machinery, that type of thing. But otherwise, our expenses for the operation of that fitness center is coming in on target, and there's no concerns. Arena revenue. The budget is showing that we're under budget for ice rentals and things, but again, it's just due to seasonal usage and the timing of this report. The ice season had only begun at the beginning of September, so again, invoicing had not been done. There's no concerns about that revenue coming in, I think, so we feel we're doing just fine. We pointed out too that Morris Turnberry, that the revenue from the other municipalities is reported under only because their payment comes in at year end. So no concerns at all on the revenue there. I did note that there was some full-time salaries under budget for this time, and sometimes we're slightly over. There was a coverage that occurred in Blythe at the beginning of the year. So we had to do some coverage there using Wingham staff. It's fine, it's not anything of concern. Salaries and benefits for public works support is over budget, but again, it's seasonal. It just depends on snow removal and what's needed at the location. Under budget on clothing and uniforms. Again, electricity, water, sewer, all that under budget, but it's seasonal. It's all coming in seasonal and things, so. Moving on to concession and vending, revenue is higher than what we anticipated. It is a direct result that the concession booths not being available. And expenses are on target there. Knights of Columbus Hall, we don't have a lot to do with them. We do have their budget line and everything because they are our tenant. Revenues being shown under budget due to lease payments not being required to year end. But I noticed their expenses are under budget as well. In talking with Sue, it is noted that their rentals are down as well. They are having a hard time renting the facilities. Certainly the availability of facilities at Cowbell and is it called the barn in Brussels? The barn in Brussels is affecting them, and we believe that's what's affecting Blythe as well and things. So it's, you know, it's just, people are looking for a different type of facility for weddings and things like that now. Their transfer to reserves payment will not be made to year end. Electricity is considerably under budget, decreased rentals. And so that's what we're seeing is as these rentals are decreasing, so is a lot of the expenditures and things. And same thing with repairs and maintenance, under budget. Recreation programs, I pulled this one out separately only because I think quite often we think of recreation programs and it's just being at the complex, but it's not. They are actually offered at other locations, so that's why I pulled it out separately from the complex. Because we do use Effie Medill, Maitland River, and Sacred Heart schools to offer things like basketball and karate and things like that. So just wanted to point that out when we're looking at it. Revenue is above average this time of year due to some new programs being offered, but it's also reflected in increased part-time salaries and contracted instructor costs. So. And rec admin, we appear to be under budget, largely or mostly because of the transfer from reserves of the $50,000 for the rec master plan. We are planning to transfer this to the 2020 operating budget and have a discussion about this during the budget process. This project has been on the books for a number of years, and we need to make a decision, I think, as to whether or not we're going to proceed with it or put it off a few years. It doesn't matter, but it's just so that we're not continually having to do this postponement or whatever. Full-time wages are slightly over budget. Some of that's due to recent rebanding of the 2 full-time positions. We're under budget though in training and travel workshops. Some of the things we had planned just haven't been undertaken due to workload. We've got advertising under budget. That's also because we do seasonal campaigns for pushing on pushes for programs and things. So those expenses will be coming, or invoices for that will be coming forward. Miscellaneous is being shown as underspent. This title's changed a few times, so just so you know what miscellaneous expenses are, it's actually for the unplanned expenditures to repair the complex. So when the Dectron compressor, we talked about this $20,000 that's budgeted, this is the line. So right now, we don't have the invoices in, but it will be used up this year. And I know when I went through the budget process, I was like, we budget $20,000, just for what? And I was trying to understand it, I understand it now. And things, we've got an aging facility, and things happen, and staff have told me, you've gotta get your head wrapped around that it's an aging facility and things happen, so. Again, the rec master plan hasn't been undertaken, so that affected the expenditure line is not being used up as well under rec. Inspections and contracts are over budget. That's due to unforeseen expenses with computer and phone issues and the IT contract. So. And then just moving on then to capital, again, rec master plan has been undertaken. We're planning to transfer to 2020 unless there's a different direction provided by council. The pool arena boiler replacement project was delayed recently, you recall, because we needed those funds for that emergency replacement of the Dectron compressor. So we will be coming forward with a report for pre-budget approval so that we can get it that project underway early part of the year. And in also as a capital project, we had the CO2 monitors for the Blythe Arena. That is currently underway and should be completed by the end of the month, and the project costs are on target.
Go ahead, Kevin.
For the sake of sounding a broken record, but it's just my perception of how everything's seen. This budget for the West Gas Center, it's split up and shown differently. And it gives it in a different light, at least my perspective, because I'm listening to your going through all the different portions of it, and you're using it, oh, no problem at all is fine. But when they went through the Blythe, well, we gotta look at repurposing this building or doing something else with it. They're not shown in the same balance. I just wanna know why, or I know why, but it just makes it sound like it's being pulled apart to make it look better. I'm just making a statement, that's all.
Go ahead, Chris.
I don't know, it sounds oversensitive, Kevin.
They're not trying to close your hall.
Oh, yeah.
The complex is got, like, that's called a complex because there's so much involved. Each of the particular items, they're huge. And I think we would all want them to be pulled apart. The Blythe one, like, it's not being trounced on by any means. For the hall part, it's a suggestion, perhaps we can repurpose it or try to get more business through it, like, that's all. It's just a business thing.
As long as we look at everything.
I'm just gonna add to that, Chris. Yeah, I never took it as we were trying to shut anything down. When I made the comments about you could paint it every day, what I meant was, I don't think the staff is being allocated properly because you're not using the hall. So they must be down in the arena doing something, and it's just, to me, the money was wrong. But I think it's a great idea, and you've expressed the fact that you would like a daycare in Blythe, and Val is following up on it. Vicky just happened to say we're not using that. Well, there's your daycare center, and that just speeds that along. I, as Reed, never took it as and I understand you're looking at it from your point of view, Kevin. And I stand with you on let's have a look at this, but never took it as closing any, it's part of that building. And I'm gonna reflect back to what some of the girls said, and then I'll let Vicky speak to it next. Maybe we are trying to cut this up too much. For God's sakes, it's a building. You're not gonna cut half the building off and not use it. It is a building, and this is what the building costs, and that's it, let's use it. I'm not sure what to do with that, but I hope that clarified it a bit from the Reeves point of view. My intention or thoughts or nothing in my world said, don't use it or close it. I was thinking, I think you got the labor allocated to the wrong place, because I've been at that building, we've had meetings in that building, and I don't see, I'm glad it's only $8,000 a year cleaning, because what do you clean? You sweep the floor, you know what I mean? So I was kinda looking at it a little bit, do you know where I'm coming from now?
Yeah, I understand, but I was assuming that one portion is being split up into 10 different pieces
Mm-hmm.
and looked at it line by line.
Mm-hmm.
But the Blythe complex is being just seen as maybe one or two pieces. And
Yeah.
It's not been broken down to see where the good points are, and
Yeah.
it's just, it's just not showing, we're not getting any money from this one.
Yeah.
So we should do something.
Yeah.
I just don't see that same process being used for both.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, and we did ask Vicky to make that change, and that was very clear from council. Go ahead, Vicky.
Through your worship. I apologize if that's how that came across, because I did not in any way, shape, or form think about, when I was talking about repurposing, it was not in terms of disposing of that building, closing that building, anything like that at all. I just really was trying to bring it to the attention, and it was only because there was such a huge difference in what we had budgeted versus what the actuals were coming in at. like, community centers come in a lot of different shapes and forms when you start looking at, some of them do have daycare facilities, some do have libraries attached to them, some have fire halls. It's very different, and I did not in any way, mean that to come across that way at all. It was part of the discussion, it's been weighing on my mind, I've had, several, discussions, with Donna, with Dwayne, with Sean, we've talked about different things and that, you know, is there ways that we can save money in things? You know, can we move something, you know, because we talk about we have too many assets and things, so when, it was just an idea. Idea that, you know, Val is in need of space, that could be space, or it could potentially you could move the library there and then save the rent over on the library. That's council's decision, I was just identifying a few things, I did not, and I really apologize if that's how it came across, and I did not mean it to be negative. It was just really trying to bring it forward to council that this is the situation we're in. If council wishes to continue operating it as a hall, we're more than happy to do that, but we are gonna take a look at how much we're budgeting for the operation of it, because when going through this budget process, I'm very cognizant of the fact that, comments that Donna had made about every $50,000 is this much percentage in taxation. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, we budgeted a lot of money for the operation of that hall, and we're not, and could that have reduced the taxes that the people in North Huron are paying? So, not looking at all at closing it or anything like that. If anything, I would like to put more programming down there. But just offering that information, and maybe I drew too much attention to it, and I apologize for that, because that was not my intent. It was just, council, here's a year of operation, this is what we're seeing, and it wasn't even in my mind about closing it at all. And I'm sorry if that's how I delivered it.
No, I was just how it was seen compared to the other trustees.
I would be more than happy to streamline how that is presented to council on these budgets, because a lot of staff time goes into having to code out everything and break it down that I'll use the North Huron complex for instance. 50% goes to the arena, 25% goes to the pool, 20% on every invoice that comes in. So if council is willing to look at it as a whole, and that this is the cost of a complex, and this is a revenue line for the hall, and this is the revenue line for ice, and that, I'm more than willing to do that.
Yeah, no, I didn't take any, I definitely didn't take any personal, my job is to advocate for Blythe. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm just
Absolutely,
doing, man.
absolutely.
So actually, I'm just gonna let Anita speak to it, and then I think we'll move on. I think we've run this, unless you wanna speak to Trev.
I think we need to have, I think the rec master plan needs to be not taken out of the park anymore. It needs to not be taken out of the budget,
And-
just for the reason of this discussion right now.
Yeah, and you know what, Trevor, I wanted it out of the budget, but I'm siding with you now. After this conversation and after what Kevin said, I believe we need to go ahead with that rec master plan. You won one over on me, Beth. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just feel a little bit offended by Kevin saying we are not Huron, and he is saying it's not your hall, we are going to close. Blythe is my hall too.
No, I'm just, like I said, I wasn't a person, I was just advocating for the people in the.
But still. It's our hall.
I apologize about it.
Okay, so if we, with one more, department or one more slide, if we can go through that one, if that's okay, and then I'm hoping we're still right around noon, is everybody okay? We're gonna try to adjourn, at noon, if that's okay. So I'm gonna talk quickly about the economic development, budget. So this one does look really out of whack, and, that's because you're all well aware of all the things that have been going on, and again, here we are, we have a lot of things that are gonna happen in this last quarter, in this budget. So one thing is that the advertising, the $15,000 for the Blythe Festival partnership was paid, and then some of that's going to be carried over to 2020. As you know, the RED grant was not approved, so that money, it was remaining in the budget. So there has been some funds reallocated to the website. And one of the new things in the budget this year was that we had a $50,000 transfer to reserve, and that was to purchase future property. But it has been through council, it has been reallocated for the Hutton Heights development. So it's the same idea, it's just it's not going into reserves now. It's actually been spent this year on that development. The Main Street Revitalization Program, all the funds are allocated now, but we should be seeing the bills come in. So they're not in yet, but I know Carson had some bills in just the other day, so we'll see those come in through the end of the year. The In It to Win It project, the winner was selected. She's set up here on Main Street, so that's wonderful, and we'll be paying the bills as our commitment to her for the rest of the year. The sled project, which was basically the Alice Monroe walking tour, that is, there's still expenses to be paid for that by the end of the year. And this one other piece, the community partnership piece, it is an economic development, but as we've been talking about, there's pieces of our budget, money that we have to spend that doesn't fit neatly under a certain section. So here's where it is. And so we have the hospital payment. We have a hospital payment of $50,000 paid in November, and we have to pay it in 19 and 20. And then we've talked about how many ideas we have where that money can go from once our commitment to that is over. There's a million places for it. So, Dwayne, this is your bailiwick. Is there anything you want to add in the economic development part of this one? Your committee, with your committee?
No, I think Bernie and Kevin have been sitting at the economic development table as well, and as Don has indicated, it is at this point in time appearing to be significantly underspent. But as Donna has pointed out, there's a number of expenditures in the next couple months. But there will be, in terms of, for example, the website, the request for proposal for the website has been issued. But again, we won't be expending all of those funds in 2019. We'll have to put some of those funds, some of those funds forward. So we'll award the contract. That'll be brought back to council later this year to award the contract. And after that contract is awarded, the selected vendor won't be able to complete the work by the end of the year. So we'll have to roll those into the 2020 to complete that. But for all intents and purposes, those funds will be allocated. So the funds will be spent. The projection on the economic development, I think I worked it out about $5,000 or $6,000 that we might come in terms of under budget, but for the most part, we're pretty much going to spend all of those funds by year end. Yes.
Okay, so moving on then, so I just wanted to, on our last slide here, I just want to say, so our last quarter is full on. There's a ton of work to get finished up in the last quarter, so we do a lot of scrutiny this last quarter because the bills are coming in droves. We're finishing everything up. So we are really monitoring this last few months to make sure that we come in where we want to be. And so this exercise, as I said, the opportunity that I felt, one of the biggest opportunities for me is to work with the department heads because it really gives them the basis for the 2020 budget. They know tweaks that they have to do in the budget, places where they've got to make changes, and so that was a twofold purpose of today. As I said, we're busy finalizing projects. We know we're not going to get them all done, so some are going to have to get moved forward to next year. As Sean reiterated and Vicki, these projects aren't going away. It just wasn't possible to get them done this year. Finalize the strategic plan. You've got some meetings upcoming to help you finish up the strategic plan, so we'll get that done for this year, which will be a guiding principle for us as we move through the next couple of years. So yes, we're going to have some transfers to reserves, and as I said, so we don't want that confused that this is surplus money. It's just money that either the project didn't get done completely or is being moved forward. Rates and fees. So I'm not going to dwell on that, but we have to have a bit of a meeting devoted to our rates and fees. So as I said, we really have to talk about we had BM Ross presenting our proposal for rates and fees for the water and sewer for the next 5 years, which was, he was recommending, one was a 7.2% increase, one was a 9% increase. And again, you get all wound up on percentages, but that was like between $2 and $3 a month. So it wasn't as if that meant, you know, hundreds of dollars for the ratepayers, although we're cognizant, whether you're paying water or sewer or taxes, it all comes out of the ratepayers' one bank account type of thing. So we do have to talk about rates and fees, and also we wanted to talk about the Belgrade water as part of that. That was part of our discussion, that we have to get that determined. And Kirk, I think, wants to bring forward some new rates and fees, and Val is, and so, anyway, that's going to take up a block of time to get our rates and fees set up for the new year. And of course, we have a lot of follow-up with our suppliers. At this time of year, we're really on our suppliers to make sure they get us our invoices so that we can get them all processed, so that we have our documents ready for year end. So I will close up on my part of the meeting today. I welcome, as do the department heads, any feedback from council, whether you have felt that the timing of this was worthwhile. Is there anything we can do to help you? Too much information, too little? Whatever council would like to provide as feedback, we welcome that so that we can improve for you.
Go ahead, Rick.
I'd like to say all reports, I thought were very well done, every one of them. I think it was a worthwhile meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Trevor.
The one thing that I have, I've been advocating for a little bit on is I liked the fact that we have the report that shows year to date. But the report that we get, the year-to-date report that we get as we go through the year, I'd like to see it where we have a trend call. Like, where does the department think we're gonna land? So that, this meeting, yeah, great, we're getting that information now, but we could be seeing that trend all the way through the quarters, so that if something comes up in the quarter report, we could ask the question during a council meeting that says, oh, you're budgeting 2.2 million, or whatever the case may be, but now the trend says you're gonna be at 1.8. Well, why is that? Or the comment, but the fact that we have, for me, it's always more important about where we're gonna end up, not for what the percentage is of the budget. Because the budget is, because you talk about the whole fact we're not 1/12, it's irrelevant in the sense that I just want to know what we've requested the taxpayer to pay. We're going to get to that point at some point during the year. And if you don't know that, if in the first quarter it might be identical to what your budget is. It might be. But I'm concerned that fact that we're waiting now till October, and I suspect we would have heard something by long before now. But there's nothing in the report that we're seeing quarterly that would flag that to us if anything ever came up. We're expecting staff to advise us of that, but there's nothing that would stick in our head during a council meeting or a report that would say, in case it got missed, yeah, okay, I want to ask a question about that department because it's trended to be, staff think it's going to be over budget for whatever reason.
Yeah, we do that, like I think one of the things that we've talked about is the year-to-date report is in consent. And so, we don't take a few minutes to, I note all that kind of stuff, and when there is anything that's over, like you say, and is what you've just commented, is if there's a problem, like Sean's just brought to you, the VOMAG problem and those types of things. So we are required to bring you a separate report for any of those types of things. But definitely we could add something in here, as I say, throughout the year to twig. The problem that we find as staff is it's often, until we get a half a year in, we don't, these things aren't identified. Like, a blow up, yeah, we know those sorts of things, and we know, we almost need 2 seasons to know how we're trending. And so, maybe I could put some more emphasis on the June report. Maybe an idea would be March, we're just getting the budget passed, so like you say, it's pretty much on what the target is. But maybe what we should do is say for the June report is take a few minutes in council and kind of discuss it. and rather than just have it in consent. So maybe that's something then that would help that as well. Trevor, do you think?
Well, I think it's fine, but what I'm saying is it's okay to be in consent. The issue is that sometimes there's not enough notes to really understand. It's not the large ticket items, because those have to come back.
Right.
I'm talking about operationally. Like, for example, the discussion about hydro and how we were under budgeted, or there seems to be a budget issue. Well,
Yeah.
hearing that in October isn't something that is consistent on, if we were seeing that in June, that could have been mentioned, and then that discussion would have been come and gone. But I just, for me, having this meeting is great, and I think I'm not suggesting, but I'm concerned you make this meeting in October, you're condensing everything into a 3-hour discussion, where if you put it in the trend discussion in the report, this meeting deals with only the issues that we need to deal with. If it's trended on target, what are we talking about? Right? Because we're gonna be talking about the budget in another month or two anyways.
Right.
Go
Okay,
ahead,
thanks.
Chris.
Through you, Reeve, I'd like to see the budget pulled out of consent in June, and for heads to, like, I don't want them to spend a ton of extra time, but at least know, just like Deputy Reeve said, that if there's a out of whack trend or something, but pull it out once, and then have this meeting again in October basically for the year-ish.
Yeah.
I would like to see that.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we're gonna move on. That's it for 4.1, or sorry, 4.2. 5, closed session and reporting out. There are none. But before we go to the bylaw, Dwayne has some interesting information that we're all gonna be so happy about. I'm gonna let Dwayne speak to it.
So as you can appreciate, over the course of their careers, and on a regular basis, staff advance themselves and move themselves along in their careers. And I'm happy to let you know that this past Wednesday, Carson graduated from the Masters of Public Administration program at Western. Yeah, and he showed me a photo yesterday of a plaque he'd received. It was a new award that was established. And Carson, correct me, but my understanding is that it was for the student who had the highest grade average in the graduating year. Is that my understanding? So that's
Congratulations.
yeah, so in recognition of this, we have cake, Carson doesn't know. And that available. So I believe Mandy and Kenzie we're going to be helping with that. So if everyone's available, I invite you to stay for some cake.
Is your face getting nice and red?
I know the feeling, Carson, it's okay. I know the feeling. Well, let's just do 6.1, bylaw number 102-2019, being a bylaw of the Township of North Huron to confirm the October 25th, 2019 actions of Council of the Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin and I have Anita. All in favor? Carries. Adjournment. The Council of Township of North Huron agrees being no further business before council. The meeting is hereby adjourned at 12:05. Do I have a mover? I have Rick and I have Paul. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.